And welcome into the Tuesday edition of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5. The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this rainy Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. If you're out and about today and or this morning, make sure you're careful out there. The roads are very wet, and we're going to continue to see rainfall from the remnants of Hurricane Ida all day long here today in the Middle Tennessee area. So make sure that you are aware of that and that you're careful out there. Joe Rexrode, I can tell you, it was a little soggy on the way into work this morning.
Yeah, I was just going to ask how rough was that drive?
It was. I would say from my area in Greenbrier on down to the airport, it wasn't bad yet, but you could tell there was some ponding starting to take place on Briley Parkway. So make sure you're aware of that out there.
Yeah, and I'd like to apologize to anybody watching the stream, because I usually have this lamp that I put on myself, and instead, so I have the overhead light. And does it look kind of like I have a halo? There's
the interrogation lamp, or you're just an angel, one of the two.
Yes, it's very angelic here. So, but actually, if I go like this, you can barely see my face, which is not bad.
We all want to see Rexrode's face here early on this Tuesday morning. That's what we do here.
Look at that Packers jacket. Did you just get that?
Yeah, man. We picked up a starter jacket, Packers jacket in Florida from the 90s. It's got like a throwback logo on it. I'm a big fan of like all things 90s anyway, but when I saw the starter jacket, I felt like it would be malpractice for me to walk in there and not get it.
That's beautiful. That's probably like something Don Magic Man Mikowski wore.
Yes, probably
real,
so.
Like in real life.
It probably is. I looked around. They had a few starter jackets in there. No Titan starter jackets in there, though. I was looking for like an old school, either Houston Oilers or Tennessee Oilers starter jacket. I was going to pick one up, but didn't have that one. They had like a Packers one, a Cowboys one, and a Niners one. That was it.
Yeah, boy, there were a lot of Cowboys and Niners one back then too.
Yeah.
They were everywhere.
Yeah, long live the 90s. Things are coming back around. Even the mullets coming back around that we saw in the early 90s. So good stuff. Everything comes back in style at some point. Joe Rexrode, how was Titans practice yesterday, and what do you think they're looking to accomplish here this week as they continue to move through here with so far no Mike Vrabel back on the field? And an extra week in between the final preseason game and the first regular season game coming up on September 12th against Arizona.
Well, yesterday, was one of those days where, your value as a person goes down. So that's what happened to me, because no longer can I come back to the show and tell people what I saw in practice yesterday, other than here's who was there, and here's how the stretching and a couple of drills look, because it is now regular season mode. So no more, we won't see any more of the team periods. No more watching these guys play football, other than when they play football on Sundays. So I will say, though, and I put a beautiful video on Twitter.
Yes, you did.
Julio Jones was full go and again, even though we didn't see team stuff, he was more involved than like he had been. And AJ Brown was with him. Every drill AJ Brown led, then Julio Jones went next, and then all the other guys followed. So they did all the stuff, looked good. So that's probably the most positive thing. Like you said, a lot of people out, and the list keeps growing of people on the reserve COVID list keeps growing. You also on the receiver room. So you had Josh Reynolds, not surprised he wasn't there. Marcus Johnson, not terribly surprised there either. And, obviously for his sake, he needs to come back quickly. I think he's going to make the team, but Cam Batson also not there. So, and then a host of other guys as well. But look, they've got this time, and Tannehill should be back this week. And if Julio is all good now, then that aspect of getting ready for the season should have plenty of runway.
Yep, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday here on the show. There was really no reason, based on the warm-ups that we saw Saturday night against Chicago and just the way that they've kind of been handling A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. It feels like they're going to be ready to go by the time that Arizona comes around. A.J. Brown's been fine. Julio Jones has been working his way back, but there's been zero reason to rush him to this point. Man, yesterday he's out on the field, at least in the parts that we were allowed to see, and a full go, as you said. But Nate Davis put on the reserve COVID-19 list, and I believe there are 11 others at this point that remain on that list. So not good news again yesterday from the Titans on that front. And you talked about it yesterday, Joe. I mean, right now, worst case scenario, if you're vaccinated here, you're 10 days out. This continues to move along this week, and day by day we continue to go forward here, and maybe more guys get added to the list. It starts to become a pretty big concern at that point about their availability for the first game against Arizona. Not good news yesterday to see Nate Davis put on the reserve COVID-19 list as well.
Well, exactly. And so, Nate Davis also, of course, I mean, he really has been out for a while with an undisclosed injury, started to just come back last week. Same with Ben Jones. I mean, it's weird. Like, both of those guys have missed a lot of time. They're going to be fine. I mean, they're both good players, but now you go onto the list and look, I mean, and I don't know, I mean, you basically assume everyone's vaccinated, but I don't know every single individual in that situation. And if it is a positive and you've got COVID going along with a whole bunch of time of not practicing, and now you have this time, what kind of shape can you expect, especially, some of the linemen to be in for the opener? Like in football, obviously, if the offense is on a drive, you think about that defense getting exhausted and stuff, right? But I mean, the offensive linemen are tired too. They just feel a little less tired because they're actually firing off the ball and moving the ball. But you think about how hot it could be in that opener against Arizona, and just early in the season, who knows with Seattle. But there's a lot of things about this that are less than ideal for the Titans.
Yeah, no question about that. And here we are. You're a week away now from game week if you're the Titans, and now the health of the offensive line that we've talked so much about here on the show. Ryan Tannehill's been out the last few days on the COVID list. Mike Vrabel's been out the last few days on the COVID list as well. Trying to get things back in order and ready to go for the first game of the season, and that proven to be a bit of a challenge right now for the Titans as well. 53-man roster is due today, and Joe, the 53-man roster going to be very interesting from the Titans day to see what happens on that front, given the bodies they have right now on the COVID list.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it comes with a little star, with a little asterisk next to it, but still definitely some interesting cuts to be made. We've already seen one. John Simon. I don't think anyone in the Titans media corps had John Simon out in trying to predict this thing. So there's going to be, I have no doubt, a couple more surprises today.
And then we saw some breaking news in the NFL last night from a former Titan, Malcolm Butler, who, of course, is now with the Arizona Cardinals and was scheduled to take on the Titans in the first game of the season. Apparently going through a personal situation at the moment. And according to reports last night, Joe, whatever this situation is for Malcolm Butler, it has him mulling retirement at this point. So Malcolm Butler has not been there the last few days with the Arizona Cardinals and going through a personal situation. First off, just hope that everything is okay and that whatever he's going through gets resolved at that point from a personal standpoint. But it would be a shame from the football side of things not to see Malcolm Butler on the field in Week 1 as well.
Yeah, that would be too bad. And yeah, I haven't seen anything, specific on that. But was he definitely a starter?
I think so.
Slotting in to be,
yeah.
I think so, right? I mean, yeah. So a loss for them, and if that's the case, so hopefully everything's all right with him.
Yep, we'll see what happens on that front. Titans taking on the Arizona Cardinals coming up on September the 12th. I was looking forward to seeing A.J. Brown potentially head up against Malcolm Butler. I mean, we've seen that time and time again in Titans practice. Some intense battles on that front. Would have been nice to see that in the game front as well. So hopefully everything is okay with Malcolm Butler and he's able to come back and continue to play. We're off and running here today on Robby and Rexrode. Got a lot coming your way today. We got a lot of Vols talk to get into. Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel will join us to begin the 7 o'clock hour, scheduled to be joined by Titans defensive back Elijah Molden at 7:30 as well. So a lot to come in the first part of the show today. But when we come back, Jared Stillman had quite the take yesterday on a prominent Titans draft pick this year that had Joe Rexrode spinning his head around in circles. We'll get to more what that is coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Join us in partnering with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's Light the Night. Light the Night brings light to the darkness of cancer through hope, research, and support for patients and their families. Through this inspirational nationwide movement, we raise awareness and funding for groundbreaking research and treatment options to eliminate cancer. Nashville's Light the Night will take place on November the 5th at Nissan Stadium. You can register and learn more at lightthenight.org/TN. Once again, that's lightthenight.org/TN. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. And we've talked about the Titans, the situation that they have right now on the offensive line. Daniel Munyer going down on Saturday, Ben Jones on the COVID list, and now Nate Davis also on the COVID list. That was announced yesterday, so it continues to kind of run through the Titans right now, leaving a lot of question marks on the offensive line from a depth perspective at the moment. And one guy that's been relied on heavily and that could continue to be relied on heavily is second-round draft pick Dylan Raydens, who, of course, we've talked a lot about here on the show, Joe. Struggled very early in camp, has played both at right tackle, and they've moved him inside to guard as well. And he's a guy that you were hoping probably would be a little bit more ready at this point than he's displayed that he is. And Vrabel even talked about it yesterday when it comes down to the right tackle position. Dylan Raydens not really in the mix for that at the moment. Talked about Kendall Lamb, Tyson Brilo, and obviously David Quessenberry yesterday as well in his press conference. But Jared Stillman had his own takes about Dylan Raydens yesterday on his show that left Joe Rexrode's head spinning a little bit after that. Here's what Jared Stillman had to say yesterday on Stillman and Company.
Who was the second-round pick?
Dylan Raydens.
Guys, he may develop into a good offensive lineman one day, but today is not that day. He is not active on game day if I'm coaching right now. I mean, he's getting smoked out there. Can't play tackle, can't play guard. I mean, the truth is, right now, Dylan Raydens can't play. He needs a redshirt year. He needs to mysteriously go to IR with a bruised tricep and stay on there for the rest of the season and us all to forget about him. And so if he pretends to get hurt, then we won't sit there and say, gosh, this guy is a second-round pick, and he can't get on the field, and he can't get active for game day, and he can't. We'll just forget about him, and then he'll come back next year. And then maybe have a chance to prove he's an NFL player. But right now, he's not that.
So that was Jared Stillman yesterday on his show. Joe Rexrode basically punting on Dylan Raydens this year for the Titans before the regular season ever even begins. Joe Rexrode, your response to Jared Stillman's take on Dylan Raydens yesterday, the second-round pick for the Tennessee Titans.
Well, I mean, I think we got to bust out Skipman again. I think this is a Skipman right here. I was listening to the monologue, and I agree to some extent with a lot of his points, although essentially Jared was saying he feels less good about the team after everything. I would not agree with that overall. I agreed with some of his points. I mean, to me, Farley and Dupree, we haven't seen Dupree at all, but we know he can play. Farley hasn't played all that well yet, but to me, the overall development of pre-camp to now is a positive for both of those guys, in my opinion. It could be way worse right now. We could have gotten to this point and not seen them at all, but we'll see we'll see with Dupree on the field. We'll see with Farley if he can actually push you in the lineup. I mean, I think right now, clearly he's not pushing, or he's not about to be with the ones. He's got to earn that. But yeah, that Raydens take is just so panicky and overboard. Dude, and the thing is, I think the worst part about it is it's not understanding the depth chart on this team. I mean, I don't disagree that right now Dylan Raydens isn't very good. I think he's gotten better, but he's not very good. But the idea that in August, what a rookie offensive lineman will be in October, one, is silly. Two, who's providing depth, especially on the interior? I mean, that's a lot of why he's been working there, not just because he hasn't been good enough at right tackle, but because, they've had, Daniel Munyer centering, and now they just got Aaron Brewer back, off his injury. But I totally disagree that Raydens is going to be inactive on game days. I don't think that's the case. I think he's going to have to be active. I don't know that he'll be good. But the idea of just put him out, hide him away or whatever. I mean, look, Nate Davis was a different situation. Nate Davis still was dramatically better mid-season, probably more like late season, really, than he was at this point. And he was hurt some, but when he was out there, he did not look good 2 years ago. And, he got dramatically better in that rookie year. That's why you got to work with him week after week. I mean, Dylan Raydens needs all the reps in practice. He needs to be active. He needs to be out there. And maybe he won't be active every game day, but right now I would guess that he would be. So, yes, very panicky or fanicky Skipman take there by Jared.
I would agree that it's too early for that conversation in terms of just totally punting on Dylan Raydens for the year. I will say, though, it's disappointing, in my opinion, that your second-round pick is not more ready than he is. I mean, you drafted a guy in the second round to be your right tackle, and, you and I were talking about shortly after the draft pick, is there a scenario where Dylan Raydens could come in and maybe by the time camp's done be ready to start at right tackle. And I think it became pretty apparent early on that that was not going to be the case. And you've talked about it. They've moved him around from right tackle. They've played him at guard, and I think a lot of that's due to the lack of depth that they have at the guard position. But I will say, the fact that he's not even really close to being ready to start at this point, I think is highly disappointing for a second-round pick.
I 100% agree with you. But again, it's like two different things, and it's two different things being true. It's been disappointing. This is a huge investment in someone that you hope helps you. Well, everybody knows where the hole is. Everybody knows where the intent was for Dylan Raydens to matter for this team. And right now, I mean, Vrabel was asked yesterday and basically confirmed, he's not right now in the mix. I mean, it's Quessenberry, it's Sombrilo, it's Lamb at that spot. And again, Dylan Raydens is a depth guy on the interior as a second-round pick, and that is absolutely disappointing. And overall, I'd say he's been disappointing. I'd also say that overall, again, there has been progress, but at this point, you have to hope he keeps getting better. If this progress from, the last, I guess, well, let's see, the first preseason game was 2 weeks ago Friday. So, it was kind of like right before that. So it's almost 3 weeks now. If you were able to, keep incrementally going in the right direction, it's possible that he could be an asset for this team at some point. He's still a guy that you don't want on the field right now.
Sure.
You want Nate Davis to be on the field. You want Roger Saffold on the field, and obviously Ben Jones. And then the next guy is I would think would be Brewer, but there's nobody after that. I mean, so, he's got to be a part of this team, and it's very different. The Isaiah Wilson comparisons are obvious because it's a second year in a row with a big investment in a right tackle who, is doing things other than playing right tackle for you. But it's a very different situation in terms of, the work being put in. And I think the feeling about him around the building, that only takes you so far. You got to do it on the field. But I'd say he's going to be a part of the team, and let's see how it plays out. To go back to your point, though, there's no question. I mean, you spend a second-round pick to shore up right tackle, which is the one question mark you have after you move on from Dennis Kelly, and he's not doing that.
Why do you think it is? And you brought up the Nate Davis situation, which I think is a really good example of this. He was not very good during the first part of his rookie year, and then as that year moved along, he got better and better. And at the end of the year in 2019, he's a really good player for the Titans, and we know what he did last year. He's becoming, I think, an underrated and really good interior guard in this league. Why do you think on the line there can be so much improvement in year one from where you start to where you finish? It seems like maybe on the line offensively more so than anywhere else. And it's not just a Nate Davis situation. We see this happen all the time throughout the league. Rookies can improve pretty dramatically throughout the year. Why do you think that is with that specific position on the offensive line?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's different with different people too. I mean, I think for him, you have the long laugh and you have the huge step up. You didn't block Power 5 guys week after week after week, like, if you were in the SEC or Big Ten. But I don't know. That's a good. I mean, it's a tough position. I think even receiver in the NFL, sometimes you see. I mean, look, some of these college offenses are simple compared to the NFL offenses. So there's some of that. Your head swimming. Does it all come into place? Do you get the full picture of the offense and what you're trying to do? That helps a lot to do your job well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, look. I mean, Taylor Lewan was up there yesterday, and he again sort of repeated I think Dylan had a better camp than me as a rookie, but if I recall correctly, I mean, Taylor Lewan was out there right away, and
he was
awfully good. I mean, look, Jack Conklin came in, and of course I covered him in college, and he was ready to rock, man. He was ready to rock right away, and he was very good right away. So, I mean, it's different with different players, but yeah, Nate Davis just happens to be that very recent example here, and like you said, by the end of the year, he and Conklin were a heck of a combination. It is, I just think in general with that position, there is so much timing and chemistry that goes into it. And so it's good to cross train someone like Raydens has been at left guard. He's been at right guard. He's been at right tackle. I think those are the only, I don't think I've seen him at left tackle. I could be wrong, but you're also like at some point you got to settle into one place and work there over and over with the same people to your left and your right over and over, or, preferably with him with one person to your left over and over. It's just not happening for him, but I don't know the answer to that. That would actually that'd be a good story.
Can Raydens play center? You think he can snap the ball? Just throw him in there for that too?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but Cole Banwart is here.
It's true.
So don't sleep on Cole Banwart.
A lot of Cole Banwart jerseys in the crowd the other night. Fan favorite.
Indeed.
That's right. When we come back, Joe Rexrode is going to do me a huge favor. He has put together yet another 53-man roster just for me to approach my over-under that I had to begin training camp with Joe Rexrode. We'll do that coming up next. How does this 53-man roster stack up to Rexrode's last one at theathletic.com? We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Periscope as well for your viewing pleasure each and every day here on Robby and Rexrode and throughout the day here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, and Michelle Knezovic here with you on this rainy Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Talking Titans, taking your thoughts on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. And Joe Rexrode, you know, before training camp started, I set the over-under for 53-man rosters from you at 3.5. And maybe in retrospect, 3.5 was a little high, but that's okay. I felt like you were going to see a lot of 53-man rosters from Joe Rexrode at theathletic.com. I think we've had 2 so far, but because you're a nice guy, because you're so swell, you're coming out with another one today just for me. Just for me today here on the show. Joe Rexrode, I appreciate it. It's a good friend right there.
Well, yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, today at 3:00, maybe before, but I guess by 3 we will know the 53. Now, again, it's the sort of 53. So it's a little weird because, again, there's going to be, I mean, we know like Racey McMath, Ben Jones and Nate Davis, Jeremy McNichols, Jeff Swaim. There are guys on the COVID list who aren't going to be like on the roster. So there's going to be replacements for them on the roster today who aren't really going to be on the 53. They get to be with the team longer than they would have been. But yeah, I thought it'd be nice. I mean, I know you wanted more 53s.
I did.
So I'm sorry I didn't do as many. It's those pesky Vols and Vanderbilt get in the way sometimes. And
yeah.
But I will say that this latest one, it is not different too much from the one I did last week, 2.0. It's very similar. There are still some key questions, though, obviously, beyond the COVID stuff.
Well, Ron has texted in on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe, I hope that you have Mekhi Sargent on the roster. So let's start there at the running back position. What does your running back position look like in the latest 53-man roster for Joe Rexrode?
Well, that's one of the changes. And, I'm taking the plunge. Now, again, today, Sargent will be on there. But the question is, when McNichols is off the COVID list, the reserve COVID list, what happens? I'm going to guess Sargent. I think he's had some really good pass protection reps. I understand the preseason camp hero stuff. This happens every year with certain players on teams, and you got to be able to, to distinguish that. But again, I've been watching that guy in practice for a month now and have been pretty consistently impressed with him. So running back, that's one change. I am going to go ahead and possibly against my better judgment. I don't feel really confident with this, but Henry Darrington Evans, who of course, again, with Darrington Evans, again, we don't know what the deal is with him. He's hurt. He's out. I'm assuming he's not going to be on IR. He hasn't been put on IR, so I've got him on the roster, and we'll see when he can come back. But Henry Evans, Sargent, Kari Blossingame, those 4.
Glad to know you have Derrick Henry making the team.
Thank you. Yes, I want to make that clear.
Very well done on that front. What about at wide receiver, which, as we've talked about, the most intriguing position battle on the team? What does your latest 53-man roster look like at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, I'm sticking with what I had last week, 7, which, of course, has to take away from somewhere else. I think maybe you could argue another tight end. You could argue another lineman. You could argue another inside linebacker. I may have this team too light at inside linebacker, but yeah, I've got AJ and Julio. I've got Josh Reynolds. He's also not out there right now, but he hasn't been put on IR. So I got Reynolds, Marcus Johnson, Charles Rogers, Nick Westbrook-Akina, and I got the rookie Des Fitzpatrick making the team.
Chester Rogers?
Yeah, I said Chester Rogers, didn't I?
Said Charles. We'll have Charles Robinson on at 8 o'clock, though.
That's so wild because TD also went Charles Rogers. Rest in peace, Charles Rogers, by the way. A real heck of a kid I covered long ago, and really sad story. But yep. Chester Rogers, thank you. And sorry.
No, it's all good on that front. It's going to be interesting. Corey Curtis brought it up yesterday on the show. with the idea of maybe Josh Reynolds heading on IR after the 53-man roster comes out. And then you have to adjust from there. But that would leave, Cam Batson off the list at that point. And, look, I agree. And I heard Chris Sanders talking about, he would still have Cam Batson on the team. And we talked about it yesterday. He's not really played his way off the team. He certainly has taken advantage of every opportunity that he's given. It's just going to be really interesting to see if he doesn't make the team. Is there another team around the league that could use Cam Batson on their active roster right now? I don't know. I think he's an NFL player. I don't know whether or not Cam Batson would make it through to the practice squad if you're the Titans.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he would either. And if they do cut him, which is what I'm projecting, it will be painful for them to lose him in the locker room. I mean, the guy sets an example of professionalism, and he has for a few years now. Don't confuse his stature with how he's viewed in the building. So that's a tough one. And again, Mason Kinsey, really, he was around a year ago, and the improvement for him has been vast since then too. And he's going to get paid by someone to be a professional football player this year. I just don't know who or where. I think the Titans would love to have him on their practice squad.
Does your backup quarterback look any different? I heard Darren Donican Chase batting this around yesterday. Chase believes Matt Barkley going to be the backup quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. Who is your backup quarterback for the Titans on your 53-man roster?
Yeah, I will apologize profusely to Woodside if I'm wrong, because I've been picking against him for years, and now I'm so bullish that he's on the team, that he's the two. I think he's better than Matt Barkley. So start there. I would agree, like, Barkley gets credit for coming in. This is what you have to do when you're a Matt Barkley in this league. You have to be ready to go wherever you can get a chance, and then you got to dive into a playbook and get right up to speed. And he did, and good for him. But I just feel like the other day, I know it was kind of framed like, well, they both made mistakes and they both had I think Barkley had a way worse night than Woodside. And I think Woodside, his athleticism is a separator, his length of time here, the trust he has with the coaching staff, the relationships with the teammates. These things aren't as important as just the question of who could give you a chance. And I suppose you could make the case that the guy who's been in the league longer could cobble together a win for you. But again, you're talking about a guy with a 1-to-2 TD to pick ratio in his career in this league.
Yeah.
I think it's Woodside clearly.
I think it is too. And look, if you're a Titans fan, you're hoping you never really have to see it, obviously. And that's regardless of whether it's Logan Woodside or Matt Barkley as the backup quarterback. There's a big drop-off between Ryan Tannehill and those two guys. But I'll say, in the 3 games this year that I've watched in the preseason, and from everything I've heard out of practice and the improvement that he's shown, I've been pretty impressed with Logan Woodside. I really have. Now, what does that mean in an NFL game, an NFL regular season game? Do I have confidence that Logan Woodside is going to come in and throw for 3 touchdowns and 250 yards? Probably not. But I have been impressed by what I've seen in the role that he plays, and I think what you brought up is the key word, and I think there's a trust there. I do. I think there's a trust there from the coaching staff to Logan Woodside that if something happens to Tannehill and you need him to come in and run the offense, maybe not make big throws and maybe not try to win the game on the back of Logan Woodside, but run the offense, do what he's asked to do. I think there's a big-time trust level there between Mike Vrabel, this coaching staff, and Logan Woodside. And quite frankly, I think maybe more importantly, I do think he's better than Matt Barkley. So to me, I think it's a pretty easy decision at backup quarterback. I know there's been some debate on that, but to me, I'm going Logan Woodside, and I'm really not even thinking twice about it.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if it goes the other way, I'm going to be really surprised. I've been more surprised than that on cut day, but I think Woodside has locked it up.
We'll continue the conversation and continue to break down the defensive side of Joe Rexrode's 53-man roster when we come back. Welcome your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. You can save cash with the purchase of a $50 gift card for Fat Cat Slims for only $25. A vibrant mid-century American bar and restaurant inspired by custom culture and retro vibes is located at 730 8th Avenue South in the Gulch. It's the spot for live music, diner classics, and the best cocktails you can ask for. Other deals include half off a $25 gift card for Joyland in East Nashville and a $30 gift card to Central Barbecue for only $15. You can get the deals now while they last at thegamenashville.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We'll be joined to begin the 7 o'clock hour by Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News-Sentinel. Tennessee taking on Bowling Green coming up on Thursday, and a starting quarterback announced yesterday by Josh Heupel. We'll get more into that coming up with Adam at 7 o'clock, and then a shameless plug by Joe Rexrode at 7:15 as well. Looking forward to that. Right now, going through Rexrode's latest 53-man roster that I feel like he's made just for me here on the show. We've gone through the offensive side of the ball, now the defensive side of the ball. And Joe, you mentioned that if you're going to keep 7 wide receivers, that's going to leave you thin in other spots, and you mentioned inside linebacker is one of those spots that potentially maybe you're a little too thin on if you're the Titans. What does your room look like at the inside linebacker position for the Titans on defense?
Well, first of all, just to quickly finish offense, I didn't change tight end or offensive line. 4 tight ends, Ferkser, Swaim, Stocker, Hudson. 9 offensive linemen. You got your starters plus, Raydens, Questenberry, Sombrello, and Aaron Brewer. And then, the inside linebacker room, I also did not change. And really, it's kind of been consistent. The question is, am I right that they're only keeping 4? Now, by the way, another thing to keep in mind on inside linebacker, David Long, didn't see him last few days, didn't see him at the game, wasn't there at practice yesterday. So that's something to watch. That's a guy who I think was really earning, a bigger role with this defense, and it kind of feels like a bigger role as the Titans transition out of Rashaan Evans, but certainly they hope Rashaan Evans has a big year. But will Jan Johnson make it 5 guys? I have the 4, those 3 plus Monty Rice. I think he'd be the 5th guy. You might feel better as a coach, probably certainly as Shane Bowen, to have a 5th guy there, but I have it at 4. I have the D line at 5, and the fifth guy is very difficult. We know the 4. Here's another hurt guy, by the way, Larrell Murchison. Not sure on him. And good point by you last break, obviously, or last segment. There may be some guys after the 53 put on. That's the way to do it. Right. So, maybe Josh Reynolds is one of those guys. Maybe Long, Murchison, Evans. We don't know. Some of those things are going to be cleared up. But right now, I've got Murchison on there as the 4th guy. I mean, look, Tier Tart is a starter. If they start with 3 linemen, he's a starter. And I think Tier Tart is going to be a good player for the Titans this year. That's a heck of a find. Who's the 5th guy? I have flipped around. I talked Trevon Coley before the Atlanta game, but Trevon Coley got hurt in the Atlanta game. Last 53, I had, Woodrow Hamilton, the 4th. I'm switching to Anthony Rush. The big question with that is, what do the Titans want in the 5th guy? Because Anthony Rush is 6'4", 361.
Yep.
Do they want that kind of absolute plugger, space eater, or would they rather have, someone like a Hamilton's 315, a Naquan Jones is lighter, at least 313, a guy who I thought who's on IR right now, or he's on IR right now, is Kyle Payco. I thought I might have gone with him, but I'm going to go with Anthony Rush. I'm going to take a guess on Anthony Rush.
You talk about a space eater. That guy's huge. That would be – look, I'm hoping he makes it I want to see it. I want to see Anthony Rush on like a goal line play and just him bum rush the middle there. It'd be awesome. No pun intended.
Well, that's potentially like, his role if he's on the roster. That's an interesting one. There's a number of ways they could go. Again, I think Coley is more giving you more of that pass rush element before he got hurt. So do they want if they want that more, then I think it will be Hamilton. So that's going to be very interesting.
What about the safety position? We've talked so much about wide receiver on the other side of the ball, but safety beyond Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker is really interesting to me defensively. And we've even talked about, and TD's thrown the idea out there as well, what about giving Elijah Molden some reps at safety? Now, with the way that Molden's come on at slot corner, I don't see that happening at this point. But what do you think the room is going to look like at safety? And I guess what is kind of your concern level about the safety position beyond Hooker and Byard at this point?
Yeah, well, my guess is it the same as last week? Yes, it is, which is Bradley McDougald. And I'm basing that off where he's been playing, when they've had him out there, who they've had him out there with, and the fact that he hasn't had, clusters of massive mistakes. But I don't feel great about that. The top three, obviously Byard, Amani Hooker, and then I have Matthias Farley as the third safety. Do they need to take? See, the thing is, I don't think they need to keep more than four, though, because you mentioned Molden. I don't think that they haven't put that on his plate. He's a rookie. They need him to be as locked in and as good as possible at the slot corner, because I think that's where he's going to start there. So, I think that would just be in case of emergency. Remember, they also have Chris Jackson, a guy who has worked a little bit at safety in the past. So, they could move some people around that way. So I think they would just keep four. I said it yesterday. Dane Cruikshank, is there still a hope that he can come back and be a factor? Is there any hope that 6th-round pick Brady Breeze could come back and be a factor? At this point, you just haven't seen those guys. So I'm going with Bradley McDougald with not a ton of confidence.
And then my biggest question perhaps on this roster, and I'm half joking, half serious, has Sam Ficken done enough in your mind to establish himself as the kicker for the Titans, or do you still believe that at some point here in the next couple of weeks that Steven Gostkowski could receive a phone call from John Robinson and that he is ultimately going to be the kicker for the Titans?
I think if that was going to happen, I think it was going to happen yesterday. So I'm in on Ficken. I think it's Ficken. Nashville hot Ficken.
That's right.
All the and again, we figured this out last week, Robby. Dennis from the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com, is the first on record making the Nashville hot Ficken pun. So if someone else can beat that, it was like a couple weeks ago.
It's gonna be hard to beat that.
It was very early, but yeah, I think Ficken's. I think he's a guy. He's been really good. Last week I wondered because he had a bad practice. He missed it. He pushed 3 kicks, and that's when he has a problem. That's what he's doing. He's slicing. And he missed 2, and he almost missed another. And I was like, oh man, he's going to mess around and squander this after what he did in Tampa Bay was so good. But he has steadied it since then, and I think it's going to be him. And look, I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the confidence level that Sam Ficken is going to be everything the Titans hope and dream. It's not super high. He's maybe a 6, but he's been pretty consistent, and he was 13 for 15 last year. So in his career, he has figured some things out recently to make him more reliable and consistent. And look, all they can do is go on what he's doing every day out there. He's jumped on this opportunity.
The biggest thing with him is just nail your extra points, dude. He missed 3 extra points
right.
last year. At 15 opportunities, you only make 12 of them. That doesn't sound like the world's biggest deal, but that's a big deal in today's NFL. You gotta be able to make these extra points. I realize they're no longer a chip shot like they used to be, but you can't go around missing extra points. And to Steven Gostkowski's credit, that wasn't really a big problem for him last year. It was basically inside of 50. He had some problems with last year, kicking field goals in the first half of the season. But as long as Ficken can keep that part of his game intact, I think he's going to be fine. Now, is he the long-term answer at kicker? I don't know. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like for the Titans. Maybe it is Sam Ficken. He's only 28, 29 years old, so it's not like he's old. But if you can keep the extra points and make sure you're knocking those through the uprights, that's the biggest thing with Sam Ficken. Make sure you're hitting your extra points.
That would certainly be big. He's got to do that. Real quick on, just to have the whole roster on the record. I'm the same at corner. I think corner is very clear cut. Jenkins, Fulton, Molden, Farley, Borders, Jackson as your 5 and 6. That's
Agreed.
a good corner group. And then at outside linebacker, again, that's where we've had a surprise already. Dupree, Landry, Weaver, and Weaver is going to play and is going to matter for this defense. And maybe Ola Adeniyi also does too. I've got him as the 4th guy now. I had him last week making it over Roberson, but also with John Simon making it. Now instead, I move Ola up, and I think Roberson's on this team. Roberson has gotten better and has some pass rushing juice. I think, he's probably not an active guy on game days unless someone else is hurt, but he's built more trust. And if there is an injury, I think they feel like Roberson can go out there, be better at the point of attack, early downs if needed, and, get after the pass a little bit. Maybe we will see him in some situations if he is active on certain Sundays.
That is Rexrode's final edition of the 53-man roster for the Tennessee Titans, unless maybe you can put one together this afternoon before the deadline. Maybe get up to 4. Be good.
I'll DM you 4.0.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And then you will be right.
Yes. I
Yes.
appreciate that. When we come back, we'll switch gears. Look ahead to the Vols taking on Bowling Green on Thursday night. We'll be joined by Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel. That's next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. Here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 2 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Looking ahead to Tennessee's season opener coming up on Thursday against Bowling Green. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com and welcome in our good friend Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Adam, what's going on, brother? How we doing?
Morning, guys. How we doing? I'm a little under the weather. I know you guys saw the presser. I was perfectly fine when I went into Josh Heupel's press conference yesterday, and then I came out with a cough and a runny nose and a sore throat. So you can blame the head coach for spreading whatever he had. He did mention it was not COVID. So
he did mention that, yes.
That's a small plus. I need to make sure my temperature can lower before Thursday. I don't think they look kindly on that in the press box these days.
I don't think they do either. We'll see if we can get that under control by Thursday. Adam, what was your reaction to Joe Milton being named the starting quarterback by Josh Heupel in Tennessee yesterday? Were you surprised that Heupel came out and said it? And how do you think that affects the rest of the quarterback room as they head into their first game against Bowling Green coming up on Thursday?
I wasn't surprised that it was Milton. I don't even know if I was really surprised that he named him because it was kind of one of those things everybody has known about, I guess, or assumed in the past week and a half. I think the more interesting thing, sort of a side note, is that Harrison Bailey and Hendon Hooker have the OR on the depth chart as the number 2. That's in the days of the transfer portal. That's what you do. You don't use the or as much for the starter because we all know who the starter is. It's trying to keep the number 3 thinking he's the number 2, whichever the 2 and the 3 are. Because they've already lost one quarterback, Brian Maurer. I mean, they lost Caden Salter back in the summer. They're getting a little bit depleted on quarterbacks in terms of numbers, so you need at least 3 guys, and so you need all these guys to hang around at least for the season. And they'll play some games early on where multiple quarterbacks you would think are going to play just because they should be overwhelming wins. Bowling Green should be a pretty sizable win. Tennessee Tech in week 3 should be that way. So if you're the number 2 or 3 quarterback, you think you're the 2 and you think you're going to play early on, and that keeps them interested, I think, both of those guys. As far as Milton goes, this kind of goes, there's 2 narratives here, and it's going to go one way or the other. Either Joe Milton is the guy who has a ton of ability and just needed the right situation and the right coach and the right offense and the right patience and all that, and he's going to end up being a really good quarterback. Or this is a guy that has a lot of potential but never really production. And each coach along the way feels like they're going to fix him, and Josh Heupel's just the latest one to think that. We're probably going to know probably by midseason which of those 2 narratives it is.
I think is Rexrode on mute. I think Rexrode is on mute. We'll get that situation figured out here in just a second.
Joe.
I'm not.
He's back. He's back. There we go. Go ahead,
okay.
Rexrode.
I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I was definitely off mute. I was making a lot of awesome jokes a minute ago, and you guys didn't hear them.
Sure, you were.
But anyway, I agree, Adam, on the 2s. That's going to be interesting. I still have my doubts that both of those guys are going to be along for the ride. I feel like at some point you have to declare your 2, right? I mean, Thursday night, if Bowling Green is as bad as Bowling Green's supposed to be, then I think, at some point, probably well before like the last few minutes of the game, you're probably going to see another quarterback, like you said. And I don't know, is whoever doesn't get put in then is that person looking elsewhere? I wonder with Hendon Hooker, just because, Bailey's still a young guy. He was a true freshman last year. He's kind of thrust into a situation. He can still grow, develop. Who knows? Joe Milton could be, like you said, Adam, he could be gone after this year if he's as good as some people think he is. But, so Bailey could still be in a good position. But Hooker came here, and he could have gone elsewhere, and he came here to start, and he probably would have. And then all of a sudden Milton comes in and I just can't imagine he's happy right now. I know that the press conference, was, hey, everybody took it great, but man, I feel for him, I guess, in particular.
Yeah. If I was I almost said agent, but if I was his advisor, I don't know, NIL.
You can be his agent.
Yeah,
he can have him now.
If I was advising Hendon Hooker, first off, I would have told him 2 weeks ago, you're not going to be the starter, and you do have limited eligibility. You do need to go to some, Conference USA school or a MAC school or somewhere to play. Yeah, I mean, those two narratives I mentioned before of Milton, Harrison Bailey, if he's given the right advice, he has to look at that and say, it's a 50-50 chance. And also they're two different guys. I mean, Joe Milton has the reputation as, I've got this cannon for an arm, I can throw it 80 yards, I can fit it in tight windows, but I don't anticipate where it's going to go. And that's, by the way, if you look in his past, that's sort of his reputation. He doesn't overthrow because he can't throw with touch. He overthrows because he's late picking up where the ball's supposed to go. That's sort of the con to the pro of his strong arm. Harrison Bailey's a little bit of the opposite. He does not throw the ball deep well, at least he hadn't in games, not much in practice. He's accurate on short to intermediate passes. He understands the offense well. And he's the yin to Milton's yang. I mean, if Milton doesn't work out, if you want to go in the opposite direction, Harrison Bailey's the guy on your roster. And Hendon Hooker's the odd man out there. Yeah, I don't see there's a way, unless there's an injury, that Hooker ends up on the field, except for maybe a package here and there for him to run the ball. But I've seen Milton in person, and anybody that thinks that he's just a statue, just a big guy that sits in the pocket, has not seen him run, because he can run it. He got size to him. I mean, he looks the part. There's no doubt about that. I'm always leery, though, when people look the part. We'll know in the Pitt game, or we'll know for sure by the Florida game, week 4, if Milton's a guy long term. I'm not so sure if we're going to know this week, though.
Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam, what's been your gauge in terms of the excitement level about this team from the Tennessee fan base? Where do you think this fan base is with this group as Josh Heupel heads into year 1?
It's conditional. Each one of these new coaches, the past, 4 or 5 coaches, have kind of had their own thing to sell. And Jeremy Pruitt was, defense and back to traditional smash mouth football with, sort of a Nick Saban stamp of approval. The selling point to Heupel is a lot of offense. You're going to come, and we may win, we may not, but you're going to be entertained. And the best case scenario for UT this year, I think, is Ole Miss last year. Lane Kiffin brought in that offense. He found enough skilled players. He inherited enough skilled players and a quarterback, which I think was important. And he'd win 45-38, or he'd lose 52-45. But either way, you went away from Saturday saying, "Well, that was kind of fun to watch, win or lose." And and that's what UT fans, I think, are hoping for. Show me a lot of offense, show me a lot of points, and it'll give me some hope. If they can show that early on, I think there's going to be a building excitement, because you are going to have a show each Saturday. I don't know if they have that. I think in some games they'll show that. I think the tempo is going to be fun to watch. I do like their wide receivers. We'll see on the running backs. I think what's ultimately going to tell if this thing can go or not is the obvious one is quarterback, but the offensive line, if it can hold up over 12 games, and I have my questions about that. But I think that's where the excitement is. It's conditional of whether or not this offense can be fun to watch. And if it is, great. If not, they're going to be in a world of hurt this year.
So, yeah, you had this 7-win prediction, which I'd say, I mean, that's on the optimistic side, although certainly not like it's not like it couldn't be done by this team. How much of that is any sort of belief that, decent back end with some guys who have played some football? You've got maybe some pass rush, Byron Young and Tyler Barron and, Juwan Mitchell from Texas. I mean, I guess what do you think the upside is or the ceiling is for Tim Banks' side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean I'm hesitant to say they're going to have a pass rush. They're going to have to be creative with that. They are going to be in more of a nickel look for their base, which whether you can bring pressure or not with that. Again, I'm a little hesitant to say that. Yes, they're going to. I think they're going to be pretty competitive in the secondary. Willie Martinez, the secondary coach, who was here 5-6 years ago when he was at UT. UT had one of the better secondaries in the conference. I think he can coach secondary. I'm not sure he's a coordinator type, but he can coach secondary. I think this coaching staff has enough experience. They'll get the most out of this defense. So I think you can maybe be competitive on that side of the ball. If they can, then it can pair well with the offense. If the offense is doing what we think maybe they can do, and there's a scenario where they win some of these toss-up games, and that's really what you're looking at. I mean, could they win Pitt? Could they win South Carolina? Maybe Ole Miss. I have my doubts about that one, but Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Missouri. You can pick out like 5 toss-up games in there. If you win 3 out of those, then you're looking at a bowl game and maybe a winning record. If they lose to Pitt though in week 2, instead of a 7-5, you're maybe looking at a 5-7 or a 4-8, because then all those toss-up games are perhaps in the L column. So we'll see, but yeah, there's a lot of what ifs on this team right now, and the secondary's got to be good. The defense has got to create turnovers. The offense has to look at least somewhat of what Josh Heupel's offense has looked like in the past, and the quarterback's got to work out. All those things go well, then you're going in the right direction. If not, this goes poorly.
Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News-Sentinel has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Adam, great stuff as always. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning, and looking forward to your coverage coming up on Thursday.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Absolutely. You as well. Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News-Sentinel, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. When we come back, we'll react a little bit to what Adam had to say there and get to a piece on theathletic.com done by our very own Joe Rexrode highlighting the new starting quarterback of the Tennessee Volunteers. That's coming up next. Right now, though, got to tell you about my friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. And speaking of college football, FanDuel Sportsbook is hooking new users up with enhanced 30-1 odds for the first big college football game of the season. You can pick either Georgia or Clemson to win, and you could turn a $5 bet into a $150 payday. I like Georgia in this game. I like the experience they bring to the table. JT Daniels at quarterback. Give me the Bulldogs in this game, but you take it any way you want to take it. All you got to do is sign up and make your first deposit to kick off the college football season on America's #1 sportsbook, and there's no better place to bet on college football than on FanDuel. They're the #1 rated sportsbook app. They're easy to use, and you get paid in as little as 24 hours. So make the most out of college football this week with enhanced 30-1 odds on Georgia versus Clemson. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up using promo code ROB so they know that we sent you. That promo code is ROB. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. New users only. Must wager in designated offer market. A $10 first deposit required. $150 max bonus. Bonus for Tennessee users fulfilled in site credit within 72 hours. Tennessee site credit expires 14 days after receipt. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. This Friday, it's your chance to participate in the Nashville SC Pick to Click, brought to you by Camarena Tequila. If you guess correctly which player scores a goal in the game this Saturday, you win a prize pack and a 4-pack of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Participate this Friday morning at 9:45. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Thanks to Adam Sparks for joining us in the last segment. We'll be joined at 7:30 by Titans defensive back Elijah Molden. So looking forward to that conversation coming up here in about 12 minutes or so. And Tennessee taking on Bowling Green coming up on Thursday night, and Josh Heupel naming the starting quarterback yesterday in his press conference. Joe Milton will be the starting quarterback for Tennessee. I think not much of a surprise on that front, but as Adam mentioned, he is not named a backup. Harrison Bailey and Hendon Hooker both still in competition for the backup spot, listed as the or on the depth chart. It's going to be Harrison Bailey or Hendon Hooker on that front. Joe, what was your reaction to Joe Milton being named the starting quarterback, and were you surprised that Heupel came out and just named him without even being asked yesterday, just named Joe Milton as the starting quarterback?
No, I wasn't that surprised by it. I certainly the work I've done the last few days on a Joe Milton story, like if he had named like Harrison Bailey, that could have been problematic, I guess, for me.
It could have.
although it's still it's still an interesting story with Joe Milton. But no, I mean, I wasn't surprised by it. I mean, look, like Sparks said, it's a pretty poorly kept secret anyway, and there's certainly no reason to do this from a competitive standpoint, right? So it's really just a matter of, I think it was a sensible move. Just here it is, everybody, get it out there, move on. And then also, it's not like everyone asking all the questions about the quarterback stuff after the game. That kind of gets out of the way yesterday. I mean, I think it's a better way to handle it.
And to that point, a story up this morning on theathletic.com about Joe Milton that you've put together after talking with some people close to Joe Milton, and it's really interesting to see what his journey has looked like from the time he was recruited in high school through his tumultuous time last year at Michigan as well, now to being named the starting quarterback for Tennessee. And Adam brought this up in the last segment too. Physically, you look at him and you just say, wow. I mean, he's got all the tools there. He's got the size. He can run with the ball. I mean, we talked yesterday with Wes Rucker. I mean, he brought up Cam Newton as a physical comparison to Joe Milton. But just the backstory here of how Joe Milton has landed here and what sort of an opportunity this is, not only for Tennessee, but for Joe Milton as well, is a pretty interesting piece that you put together at theathletic.com.
Well, I'll tell you, I've flipped totally from like my initial reaction when they got Joe Milton was like, I don't know, man. He just wasn't very impressive. And when you go through everything, and granted, I talked with people who are very much biased for Joe Milton. I talked with his inner circle here for this story. And, and so you're talking high school coach, you're talking high school kind of mentor 7-on-7 coach, and then the QB coach he still works with in Michigan. And yeah, they are biased, but they make some compelling points about what happened last year. I think the most, I guess, interesting thing for me was that really they're upset, and I don't totally understand why Michigan kept that such a secret last year. The thumb. I went back and watched the play that I think he hurt it on, and you can easily see it happening on the play. Tore ligaments, and again, like the performance from him he was incredible in the first game.
Yep.
And then he was still threw for like 650 yards in the next two games. So obviously, like the thumb was still functioning, but decision making got worse. There's a lot to it where it's like, well, how could that's not just the thumb, right? But to their point, well, when you have less confidence in throwing certain passes and things, and it's constantly dragging on you, and then the team's playing poorly, and you lose to Michigan State, lose to Indiana. A lot of things went down the tubes to the point then where he gets replaced. Our beat writer, we had Austin Meek on last week, and I mean, in the offseason, he predicted like Joe Milton's going to come back and beat out Cade McNamara and start this year, but Milton was out of there. He got his degree from Michigan. He's out of there. And I guess the question is, did Tennessee stumble upon, something special here? And I will tell you, after having gone through this and talked to these people and really look at how it all went for him last year, I think that there's a lot of pressure on Harbaugh. And if you're Harbaugh, there was talk about him being fired last year. You can't mess around. And so they made the switch, and it may end up, look, maybe Cade McNamara will be good for them this year, but I think there's a lot of people around the Michigan program who are looking at Tennessee and saying, oh man, if Joe just goes off this year, what a missed opportunity, because everyone thought this was Harbaugh's finally his homegrown quarterback that was going to take them to glory.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I brought up the opportunity that this is not only for Joe Milton but Tennessee. We talked about this last week. Josh Dobbs, great player for Tennessee, but outside of him, there's really not been that quarterback that you've built the team around since, I don't know, Peyton Manning. Tennessee, it's been a long time since they've had that. Eric Ainge was a good college player. Casey Clausen was a good college player. But, none of those guys were high-level NFL prospects. And I'm not saying that Joe Milton is necessarily going to be that either. But it is, when you have that size, you have that ability to launch the football, as we know that he does, you can start to let that mind wander a little bit. And it's interesting in this story, and you brought this up yesterday here on the show, that there are people close to Joe Milton that don't think he's going to be around at Tennessee very long because he's going to end up in the NFL. I don't know that I'm willing to go there yet. And to Adam's point from last segment, I think we're going to find out the answer to those questions as you start to get into SEC play a little bit, especially beginning with that Florida game. But this is exactly what Tennessee needs. If you could get high-level Joe Milton and Joe Milton to hit his ceiling, that's a pretty big deal for Josh Heupel in year one.
Yeah, well, it's a kickstart. It's a kickstart to everything you're trying to do, because look, I agree with you. I'm saying pump the brakes even as I'm driving the car 120 miles an hour off the ditch, like I'm driving the hype train here, so I've got to take responsibility. But yeah, I would say pump the brakes on all of a sudden, the NFL is going to be clamoring for him, but he has the tools. No one will disagree with that. No one will disagree with the idea that he has everything that you would need, including, I think, the personality. And that comes through a little bit in the piece too. He is a leader. Like last year when he started out, it wasn't just that he's this great athlete with a huge arm and everything. Like, he was leading that team. And then again, it all went bad. But what if that thumb injury ends up being, a stroke of incredible luck for Tennessee? To your point, there hasn't been a quarterback that the NFL was clamoring for. Again, Dobbs is in the league. And there's been other guys. Ainge was a pick, but a high pick, it is kind of crazy to think that it's been since Peyton. They haven't had any. Dobbs in the 4th round is the highest picked Tennessee quarterback since Peyton Manning. And that alone right there is a lot of the story. So if you had 1 year, and again, Milton has 3 years of eligibility, so he doesn't have to do it this year. He could be there, and he may need a lot more work. But there's less pressure, too, this year to just move on from him, I would say, like there was, unlike at Michigan. And so if it's still a big project, and if these guys are what they're supposed to be, Heupel and the offensive staff, then it could work out really well for both sides.
And you can check out that story at theathletic.com, coming out this morning from our very own Joe Rexrode. And you can check out Joe Milton in action Thursday night as Tennessee opens the season against Bowling Green. When we come back, we'll be joined by Titans defensive back Elijah Molden. Had a pretty good training camp so far. We're looking forward to that conversation coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Scheduled to be joined shortly by Titans defensive back Elijah Molden. So looking forward to that coming up here in just a few minutes. And Joe Rexrode, you talked pretty glowingly yesterday about Elijah Molden and how he's come on in the last couple of weeks at training camp through the preseason for the Titans, maybe even to the point now where on opening day, maybe Elijah Molden is your starting slot corner at nickel for the Titans. What have just been your impressions early on for Elijah Molden so far through camp, and what do you kind of think makes him translate so well this early on in his career to playing slot corner in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys who is actually just perfectly made for that position. Obviously not a big guy, but great change of direction. And obviously the fact that Alex Molden, his dad, played in the NFL sure helps him. It's pretty clear, and he talked yesterday too, that he's a film guy. And I know everybody in the league watches film. You have to watch film. Everybody in college football watches film too. But some people enjoy it and are good at it and use it to their benefit, and I'd say he's one of those guys.
I would say you're absolutely right on that front, and we are pleased to go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Titans defensive back Elijah Molden. Elijah, what's going on, man? How we doing?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
Doing great. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how training camp go for you, your first NFL training camp through the preseason here with the Titans. What have been your impressions so far with your new team?
Man, training camp lasted long, but it also went by like in the blink of an eye. That's what a lot of people say. I think just throughout the course of, a couple of weeks, gained a lot of confidence just from my teammates, and my teammates trusted me and being able to make plays. But really just like learning a lot, kind of, get my feet wet and get comfortable in the system.
So, Elijah, yesterday you were asked about Cortland Finnegan, the Cortland Finnegan comparison. But you're also talking about rushing the passer from the slot, which, of course, we all saw you somehow go under two guys to get a sack in Tampa Bay. But I know you've studied other players. Have you at all watched Logan Ryan from a couple years ago in this defense, a guy who was really effective as an occasional blitzer out of the slot?
Yeah, a ton of film. Like, I watched this whole 2019 season. It just makes sense just because he was in our defense, and he was the best. He was the best at for that year for the Titans. So, I learned a lot from him. I'm also able to get, his practice film, which is what I geek out over, just because a lot of people see the games, but not a lot of people see practice where he's, taking risks and learning and discovering new types of techniques. So that's what I like to watch.
Okay, so you're watching his practice film. Now that's some devotion to film. Is that common, or would you say that's like going an extra mile if you're going back and watching someone's practice film?
I just think it makes sense for me. Like, if I wanted to, if I want to learn from someone, I want to watch as much film of them as I can, and that means practice film, because I can see how they operate in individual drills, and I can see how they compete in one-on-ones and their footwork, and then I can even ask my coach, like, kind of what type of, I guess, what's his mindset when he's out there on the field. So, yeah.
Elijah, as you've kind of gone through training camp here, and with the regular season coming here in less than 2 weeks, what would you say you've learned the most throughout your time in the NFL so far, or from a technique standpoint of what it takes to play your position at the NFL level?
Sure, I'd probably just say you have to keep your head on a swivel, just with how much offenses motion and change formation. Really, it's like nickel seems like a juggling act at all times. So just being able to be fluid and be adaptable in that position while also going up against, the quickest guys on the field, It's a lot to handle, but really you just got to take one play at a time and one day at a time.
So Elijah, overall, this defense has been, really successful. I know it's the preseason, and you have to take all of that, for what it is, and it's different when you guys line up against Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and Rondale Moore for you specifically. But how much confidence do you think has been grown for the group from Shane Bowen down over the past month, even having some success against what you guys know is a very good, Titans offense in practice?
Yeah, I think in terms of defense, early on we knew we had, just like looking around at the guys we have, all positions, we got some dudes, and I've only been here a couple months, so I can't speak to what it was like last year or this and that, but I know this year, I think the standard is, from what I've heard, the standard has changed, and that's just coming from KB and guys on defense. I think they're holding everyone to a high standard.
Titans defensive back Elijah Molden on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Elijah, what's it been like from your vantage point so far playing under Mike Vrabel? I know that he's been out the last few days, at least on the field at practice, but just your impressions of playing for Mike Vrabel to this point.
I think he's a guy you want to play for, you know what I mean? Like, you could tell he loves ball. I think him not being, I think he misses it just because he hasn't been here a week, and we can all kind of feel his presence on the field. But yeah, I mean, like I said, he's a person I want to play for. Yeah.
Well, he's certainly. I mean, I've noticed just from the sideline, Elijah. You take Vrabel's voice off the practice field, and that's a constant. I mean, he's got his head on a swivel, and he's got a lot of loud comments on a lot of different things out there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in command. He's the head coach. You can tell. I could certainly tell the difference. How different was it for you guys with him out of there? And what has it been like? Are people walking around with iPads like, hey, Coach Vrabel's got something to tell you guys, or like bring his face into a room? Like, what's that involvement been like in the past week?
I mean, he's obviously still coaching from home over Zoom, and he'll pop in a couple meetings and give coaching points. I think one thing about him is, like I said earlier, he loves the coach, and he's worn many different hats. When he was a player, he talked about how he was, predominantly a special teams player his first couple of years, and then, throughout his career, like, his role changed. So he's able to coach up a lot of different positions. So, I think, he just loves the coach, and that's evident.
Elijah, what have you made of your receiving room on this team? We've talked a lot about that here on the show, obviously with AJ and Julio kind of leading the charge on that front, but the depth at wide receiver, what's it been like from your vantage point to go up against that each day in practice so far?
I think it's great just because we got so many different types of receivers. You got, smaller, quicker guys, and then a lot of bigger targets. So, like, lining up just in practice, I'm competing against a different type of receiver, like every drive and every day. So, and that's great just because you're going to see different body types in the slot. So just kind of, working my technique against different opponents, like that'll get me ready for the game. But we definitely have some players in the receiver room. I'm excited to see what they do.
And Elijah, obviously, I mean, you and Chris Jackson have been battling both at that spot. I know Chris got hurt in Florida, and we don't know what the lineup's going to look like opening day, but I know you guys all have to prepare to be playing. I'm just wondering, I mentioned Rondale Moore earlier, guy who was a really fun, explosive player out of Purdue. How much have you, in your mind, pivoted to Arizona? How much is everyone pivoting there? And have you dug in on that film yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're our next opponent, and they're a couple, a week and a half away, 2 weeks away. So yeah, I haven't dove deep yet, but I've watched a couple cut-ups of players and whatnot. Really, I think I think that's normal when you love the game. You're gonna do everything you can to prepare for the game, and then at that point, to a certain extent, I think the outcome is decided before you even step on the field.
So I got to ask you, Elijah. Now camp is broken now, so it's game. It's basically like the routine that you guys are going to have. But during camp, did you have rookie moments? Did you sing the fight song? Did you sing something else? Do a skit? Carry bags? Buy donuts? How'd that go for you?
And they really all blend together. I did recently sing the fight song. Not that long ago, we had a rookie skit that went well for the DBs. Yeah, man. I mean, usually it's at the beginning of every team meeting. We'll have a rookie go up there, and I did my fair share.
Titans defensive back. Go ahead, Joe.
I'm sorry. Who in the skit? I know sometimes you guys will have to play or impersonate coaches. Did any of that happen? And if so, who did you impersonate? And can you do that quickly for us? A couple lines.
Nah, you're not gonna set me up, man. You're not gonna set me up. There are some good laughs, a couple impersonations, a couple lookalikes and stuff. I think, people encourage us, the rookies, to go after the big names. So that's kind of what we did.
Elijah Milton, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Titans defensive back. The Titans taking on the Arizona Cardinals coming up on September the 12th. Elijah, thanks so much for taking time to join us this morning, and continued success as you move through your rookie year here.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Elijah Molden,
Thanks,
Titans
Elijah.
defensive back, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll come back. We'll react a little bit to what Elijah Molden had to say there. Welcome your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Thanks to Titans defensive back Elijah Molden for joining us in the last segment. We'll be joined to begin the 8 o'clock hour by our man Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, who broke some big NFL news over the weekend regarding Deshaun Watson and potential trade destination. So we'll get more into that coming up at 8 o'clock with Charles from Yahoo Sports. Joe, your reaction to Elijah Molden there, who I think as the days get closer to the start of this season, he's going to play a pretty pivotal role on the defensive side of the ball for the Titans this year, maybe starting as quickly as week 1 for the Titans against the Cardinals and your beloved Rondale Moore.
That's right. Got to get ready for Rondale, the Boilermaker, who one of our Cardinals writer put him as the fantasy sleeper, by the way. Just saying.
Hey, buddy.
I think Rondale Moore could be interesting. But, yeah, look, I think one of the good developments of camp has been Elijah Molden. I don't think there's any doubt about it. These are you can't count on very many rookies. And I'm talking even first or second round picks to just come right in and snap your fingers and be ready to rock. And it was a process for Molden. And again, Rondale Moore is going to be a problem for people. There's going to be times when Elijah Molden, I'm sure, looks like a rookie out there, but this looks like a good pick right now. I mean, from the information we have right now, including speaking with him, but also watching him play, seeing how he makes plays, I thought the Tampa Bay game in particular was a great example of just how heady he is and how quick he reacts to things and how physical he can play. He can be really physical out there. So I think it's going to end up being a good pick for the Titans. And it's so important to have that slot guy. I think last year they had different people in there. I mean, obviously we know what a mess it was last year all the way around, but they were, trying different people in there. And if you can have someone like this as a slot corner, that is his profession. And you can have that person long-term. I think that you feel great about that with your defense. I mean, the dude watched Logan Ryan's practice film from 2018. Yeah. Now, look, there's plenty of guys in this league who watch a lot of film. Kevin Byard is a standard setter in that building. A.J. Brown. There's no coincidence that some of those guys also end up being top players. But that's some devotion right there. Logan Ryan's practice film from 2019.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I thought it was a great question by you because it makes sense, right, for Elijah Molden to be watching film of Logan Ryan in this defense and the different skill sets that he brought to the table. Practice film I did not expect on that one. That's some dedication on that front. And look, I'll say this. I don't know exactly what Elijah Molden is going to translate into at the NFL level, but the sack in the preseason game against Tampa Bay, where he just ducked under the entire offensive line of Tampa Bay, it's pretty impressive. Looked a little bit like some Logan Ryan out there, blitzing the quarterback.
I mean, I never saw Logan Ryan go underground for a sack.
That is true.
But, no, Logan Ryan, of course, that was the big thing 2 years ago, if you remember. It was like, I mean, I remember Kevin Byard saying, like, that's one of the great seasons the defensive backs had with the Titans. And then, what Pro Football Focus or whatever, terrible grades. I mean, clearly Logan Ryan has slowed down some and all that, and it was a big number for Logan Ryan. But the guy made a lot of plays for this team. The guy made a lot of plays on the football field that helped the Titans win games, and they missed him last year. I firmly believe that. They missed him from a lot of aspects too. He was one of the leaders on defense as well, and so you can't expect Molden to come in this year and be that right away. But I think he's looking at the right guy. Logan Ryan maybe at times was victimized, and certainly when he had to go on the outside that year, he was victimized at times. Teams picked on him, but he was a guy who compensated for those things because he was such a student of the game. So that's a great model for Molden, I would say.
So if Molden is going to be the guy in the slot, what does that do for the rotation of the rest of the room? That's going to be the interesting question as they move forward here, because you have Christian Fulton on the outside right now. He's played well during the preseason. Obviously, Jack Rabbit Jenkins is in there as well. But eventually, you would hope Caleb Farley is going to be a part of things. You brought up Chris Jackson with Elijah Molden, how they've been competing for that spot in the slot. Obviously, Molden has kind of moved up with Jackson being on the back burner right now. But when Chris Jackson is back and available for this team to play, what do you think this rotation is going to look like for the Titans at corner? Because I agree with you from your 53-man roster projection earlier. I think the players themselves and the roster spots are pretty clear cut at the corner position. But what exactly do you think the rotation is going to look like for the Titans at that position?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, Molden could have rookie struggles, and at some point they may be like, well, someone else has got to go in there. That certainly could happen too. But it just feels like he's on his way to, again, I think long-term, I like his chances a lot. This year, how many ups and downs are there? I mean, I don't know. How much does Caleb Farley push? Right now, he's got work to do. I mean, I think anybody who saw Caleb Farley Saturday night, if you watched him closely in that game, he's a step slow on stuff right now. He got at one point he got trucked. He's out there playing with physicality, and again, he's got the length and the speed, but he's not ready right now to me to go out there and play winning football on a Sunday. So does that mean he won't be this year? I wouldn't bet against him if he can stay healthy. But then what does that do? I mean, I think it's just you've got that fourth guy who can come in if either of the other two outside guys falter. I think that's probably what it is. But I think Fulton had a good camp, and I think Jenkins had a good camp. And I don't know how long Jenkins can be counted on to play at that level, but right now he is certainly running better than like Malcolm Butler ran last year. I mean, that's an upgrade in speed. Fulton has good speed. So it's kind of a question of will Farley be able to push in there? And they also do. Look, Chris Jackson was the number one slot all through camp before he got hurt. And Breon Borders, I don't think that they would be too hesitant to put him out there either. So it's a good, depth competition situation.
Well, it is, and it's interesting to think about that now because one of the big questions, maybe the biggest question we had going into the draft was what's going to happen at corner. I mean, Malcolm Butler was gone, Adoree Jackson was gone, and there was just not much there at the cornerback position. And we'll see how it translates on the field beginning September the 12th against Arizona, and they've got some big threats at wide receiver. But I feel pretty good about the depth of this cornerback position. I mean, you're going to need Molden to play well. You're going to need Caleb Farley to be a factor and a part of this at some point. And I think at some point this year, you're going to need him to be a part of it. But I feel pretty good about the depth that they've been able to build at this point at corner. I think John Robinson at this point has done a pretty good job filling in some gaps and some holes at corner with this team heading into this season. And I think what you really feel good about if you're the Titans compared to last year, and even with Jenkins as a part of it, is the speed that group has. I think the speed is pretty noticeable out there in the secondary.
Yeah, no question. And, it's interesting, too, when you talk about John Robinson in this situation. So at some point during the offseason, every once in a while they'll ask us, like, okay, what was, like, the best and worst move of the GM, the team you cover? And I put down for worse, letting both Butler and Adoree Jackson go and leaving that, when you're trying to fix your pass defense. That was my pick because, at that point you just didn't know about Christian Fulton. And I think that may have been pre-draft. So obviously Molden comes in now, Farley comes in now. And then who knows with Jenkins too, but having seen them play and how they've played together, again, in a lot of cases against a very good offense. Now they haven't seen a ton of A.J. Brown. They've barely seen Julio Jones, but a good offense. And then in the preseason, it's I would say I don't know if it's a 180 on that, but I'd say this position group is one of the probably most stable of the team, or on the defense at least. Now, of course, all that said, we can talk about the depth and the competition and this individual, that individual. Still got to stop like really, really good NFL receivers and quarterbacks on Sundays, and that's just we'll have to see. And they're going to right away. They're going to be tested by quarterbacks who not only can push the ball down the field, but can get outside the pocket and really give you problems that way too. It's going to be immediately into the fire with this defense.
Going to have to get off the field on third down at some point too. Going to be a pretty big test for the Titans this year.
Yes. See if they can. The third down numbers were amazing in the preseason.
Yes, they were.
Amazing third down numbers. But, I don't think they're going to threaten their NFL record this year.
I don't think so either. Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Got a texter that asks, why was everyone so upset about Nissan Stadium on Saturday? I was at the game, Joe, and I got in, I got to the stadium around 5:15, 5:20. I got in the back gate of the south end zone, and I was in and out of the line in 5 minutes, so I missed where everybody got stuck. But I got up to my seats in section 309, and I looked down, and throughout the entire first quarter, people were struggling to get in. So I don't know what happened. I know that's been a very consistent theme for Nissan Stadium over the years of people struggling to get in the gate. I don't know exactly what the reason was this time around, but it was pretty noticeable, I believe, on the north side. A lot of people struggling to get in on Saturday.
Yeah, so this is kind of the benefit of being a ticket buyer. I got an email from the Titans because, of course, I bought tickets for that the Fast Pass for Brennan and two of them. So Brennan and a friend of his went to the game, and I kind of brought them in, walked them to like where their seats were, and then went back to the press box. And we had no problems getting in, and that was probably about the similar time as you. But obviously there were issues. The Titans sent out this long email, including mentioning that they're struggling, not getting as many people working as they'd like. Also, apparently there was some kind of an issue with the lightning and some of the metal detectors. But to be frank, we'll be frank. There's a quote from the Titans. We'll be frank. We know what happened Saturday wasn't good enough. We're actively working to fix the issues. We are working with our partners on how to incentivize more game day staff to join us at Nissan Stadium. So that would be good. You got to get more people.
That would be good.
You got to get people. You got to pay them enough so that they want to come work. And, we'll see. I mean, it was a special situation with the weather. People got sent out, then brought back in. If you got issues with the metal detectors, I'm willing to, let's see how the opener goes. I think you obviously have a problem sometimes. For games when people are tailgating to the last possible minute and everybody wants to come in at once, but you've also got to be able to handle that. You're an NFL stadium and you've got to be able to handle and anticipate things like that happening. So it's disappointing. I think there's a little bit of a mulligan based on those circumstances, but it's going to be a bigger challenge too, I think, because I think we're going to see a heck of a crowd for the opener.
When we come back, we'll look around the NFL, including some news on the Deshaun Watson front with our good friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. We'll do that next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, hour number 3 of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. And we are very pleased to go to our 102.5 The Game phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com and catch up with our good friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, what's going on, man? How we doing? How'd the summer go?
I'm doing well, fellas. I'm clinging to 2 bars here, so hopefully it stays where we need it. No, it's been, good. It's a good break, and preseason's been great. Obviously it's gotten pretty interesting lately with all the Deshaun Watson stuff, but, that's to be expected as the season starts. But, I'm ready to go. I'm psyched that it's over and we can move on.
Yeah, excited to have you back on the show with us here, Charles. And let's start right there with the Deshaun Watson stuff. First off, great job by you and your reporting over the weekend that the Dolphins have emerged as the front runner for Deshaun Watson in trade talks. Also reported that the Panthers, Broncos, and Eagles were also in some element of trade consideration, but that Watson's right to approve the destination has weighed heavily in the trade opportunities. How did we kind of get to this point with Deshaun Watson? Where do things stand right now, in your opinion? And where do you think it's going to go with here from Deshaun in terms of what trade talks could look like, maybe even with the Dolphins?
Yeah, in terms of how we got here, I think probably an underreported element of this all along has been Watson's, leverage in that no trade clause. Like it's, I think over time there was a question of, based on what some, former team Kareem Jackson inside Denver suggesting he'd go to Denver. I think I saw some reporting out there that he would have waived it to, go to Carolina. Hey, why not go to Philly, if he could turn Philly around? And the reality is he's never wavered on, Deshaun Watson has never wavered on who he would waive that clause for. It's the Miami Dolphins, and it's been the Miami Dolphins, and, he's gone as far as making it official to the Houston Texans that, informing them that, look, this is one team. This is the team I am willing to waive my no trade clause for. And putting the Texans into a position where, ultimately they're sitting there saying, well, we're this new regime. I'm Nick Cassera. I'm the new general manager. And he's got this no trade clause that I didn't give him, that ownership gave him before I got here. I have to deal with that somehow. And that's going to affect, how I can work this trade and, who I can or can't trade him to. And that's, I have to grapple with the reality that that's not my fault. Like, I just got to do what I got to do at this point. And so I think that's shaped a lot of, where this path has led. As much as Philadelphia wanted to be in it, as much as there were conversations, Philly knew, like, if the kid's not going to sign off to come here, there's nothing we can do about that. Carolina was, in the same boat. He was never going to sign off, for Carolina, at least up until today. I know that to be a fact. I think Denver, do I think there was a chance Denver could have potentially gotten into it? Yeah, but I don't think Denver really was ever on board with what the asking price was, wanting pick protections, all these different things. And, the interesting thing about Miami is that throughout this process, while other teams are like, okay, you're here with this price, you're here with the, not wanting to give pick protections, and oh, by the way, the kid doesn't want to come here, it's not working. Like, it's just not working. So these teams moved on. Whereas Miami has not moved on. Miami has not told the Houston Texans, we're done. We're not going to talk about this anymore. We're finished. It's over. That hasn't happened. Now you get to this stage today, and, this is something I reported on Friday. Now we're all the way to Tuesday. I think the reality is you have 2 teams that are sitting there saying, this is what we want. This is what we need. And it's really about what you need. The kid signed off. The kid Deshaun Watson said, that's my destination. That's my destination. That's where I want to go. Here's what I'm giving you, in terms of my waiver. But at the end of the day, if Miami is not willing to give up, or excuse me, if there's not pick protections here, and the Houston Texans aren't willing to give up pick protections to Miami, if Miami can't get that, Miami Dolphins are sitting there going like, well, we can't just onboard what could potentially be all these problems and not protect ourselves in some way, shape, or form. But I think the most interesting thing is Brian Flores had an opportunity. My report was out there for a full day by the time he stepped to a podium. And it really was as simple as Brian Flores being able to come out and say, not trading for a starting quarterback. We've got our quarterback. Not talking about this anymore. Completely shutting it down. And he could have even gone as far as saying, like, the individual that you keep bringing up, we're not trading for that player. That's not tampering. That's not tampering at all. So that didn't happen. He had a day to think about the fact that those questions were coming. Everybody knew they were coming. As journalists, we all knew that was going to be a moment where there was going to be some clarity. And instead there wasn't, clarity. So I think it's now entered a phase that is a more, run-of-the-mill moment, when you have two teams that are trying to figure out whether or not they're going to be able to come together on something. And it's, you both dig in and you say, look, this is what we need. Neither side at this point, clearly, considering nothing's been consummated, neither side's willing to give up either, look, if the Texans are not going to give up pick protections, that's going to be a problem, like flat out. Like there's no matter what happens with the Miami Dolphins, they're not going to bring on Deshaun Watson without pick protections. And to me, that's just the most fundamental starting conversation today on a Tuesday is, look, are we going to talk about the pick protections or not? The answer is no. We're going to sit here and have these two franchises stare at each other.
And just for the listener, Charles, pick protection, it's specifically how high?
So when I say pick protection, there are different ways to protect picks. As you said, you can say we're protecting it in terms of how high a pick can go, but this is a little bit different. The realm is if something happens. So let's say he's suspended for a portion of 2021 or 2022, or if he gets indicted by a grand jury, can't play. There's basically language you can work into a contract that says these first round picks we're sending to you, they become second round picks. Like there's a trigger that pushes their value to second round picks. And if we send second round picks to you, those become third round picks. Some GMs will call them like de-escalators. You de-escalate the value of a pick by moving it down around. An interesting kind of concept in this is, let's say a trade happened and the picks that were involved were 2021 picks. Well, what if we get beyond, let's say he plays the entire 2021 season, we get beyond the 2021 draft, and the Houston Texans end up using the picks that they get from the Miami Dolphins. And then after that, the NFL steps in and says, well, hey, we've concluded our investigation. We're going to suspend, Deshaun Watson for 8 games in 20, or, half the season, 8, 9 games, whatever it is, in 2022. Well, at that point, you could have worked language into the trade that says if he gets suspended in 2022, and we've already used the picks you gave us, now you got to give us some picks back because of what happened in 2022. So it's complicated. The idea of pick, de-escalators is complicated, and it's also something that affects sort of the value you're asking for too, which is why Houston, this is such a huge ask. And you hear all these people are like, why? This doesn't make any sense. I get that. Like, there's no question in my mind. Like, if you're saying to me, hey, this is potentially damaged goods, or at least from a PR standpoint, it's definitely damaged goods at this point. But we also want full value for it no matter what, and we don't want to give you any protections either. I mean, that's hard for anybody to swallow, even if you're still at the table saying there's interest here. Let's, work this out. Let's figure out. Let's find middle ground. One side's saying we don't want to give away anything. It's an unrealistic way to approach things. And, to me, I feel like at some point, if you're the Miami Dolphins, you're sitting here and you're going, like they're just not moving on anything, then you got to move forward into the season. And I think that's, if you're the Miami Dolphins, that's what you got to prepare to do right now, because this has not happened to today, and there's a reason for that. And while I'm sure Dolphins fans want to say it's because they're not interested and they're not, there's no pursuit, there's none of this, that's not it. It's because of a typical normal wall that you hit in negotiating, where one team is like, we want everything, and the other team says, we're not giving you everything.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So, Charles, with all that, there's now the narrative out there that if it goes this way and Miami pursues this, that must mean that they just do not like Tua Tagovailoa. Do you buy into that?
Yeah.
That's what this means from Miami's point of view?
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that narrative. It drives me crazy. This idea that the reason why they're doing it is just because they don't like Tua. That's not. I guess people don't understand. Here's the thing about Watson. Like, all we have in our minds about him is the recency of everything. Everything has happened since March. How could you not? Like, it was, this is like a 2x4 to the face in March when, 23 civil suits end up getting filed that obviously, became 22, alleging some element of sexual misconduct. And the lawyers going back and forth, and then all these investigations that start up, and you sit there and you go, this is all we kind of think about with this guy now, and where's his career going, and, what's going to ultimately happen with these allegations, and, is he guilty, is he not guilty, are we going to find that out? And unfortunately, there is another component of this that football teams have to consider, and that is it's the football side. And I think a lot of fans, a lot of people, when they look at a trade like this, if you're the Miami Dolphins, particularly people that really feel strongly about Tua, who clearly has improved, you think about all the negatives, the downside of Deshaun Watson, which naturally you should, and you think about, hey, we got a young kid here. We drafted him to do this. He's doing what we drafted him to do. This doesn't make any sense. But when football teams calculate, the football side of it, they look at Deshaun Watson, they go, that's a 10-year top 5 quarterback in the NFL, who, by the way, just signed an extension that from just the dollars and cents perspective, again, this is just looking at the money, looking at the football player, his contract's getting cheaper. It's getting more attractive as time goes on. So when football teams separate that out and they just look at the football aspect and the player, they know this is what he was last year. He's an elite level, all pro caliber player or near it every single season, potentially for the next 10 years. It's just the other half that we can't ignore, by the way. That is, nobody should ignore, and I'm certain the Miami Dolphins would not ignore in making a move like this. No one's doing this without a lot of hand-wringing and understanding that it reflects on the player who's already in your building, which obviously is Tua. And again, I can only stress that I believe what Brian Flores said, where he has a lot of confidence in Tua. I think he should. Like, Tua's clearly shown that he's taken steps forward. And frankly, if we move into the season and they move forward with Tua and Tua blows it up, the first month of the season or the first couple weeks of the season, I would think inside that building you have to sit there and go, hey, wait a minute, maybe we got what we need and we don't need to be at that table anymore.
Yeah. Well, Charles, I really, great reporting, but also I really love it when people get mad at you on Twitter and then you go back. I'd like to see a little bit more fighting on Twitter, if possible, with Dolphins fans and whoever here moving forward. But now
this is the danger. Okay, so this is the danger of doing like interview. Like you go on radio and like, so I go on radio in Houston. You look at 20-minute. 15, 20-minute spot in Houston, and you get people clip out like 2 minutes, and then they're like, "Oh, listen to him. He's saying that, like it sounds like he said he guessed, or through the process of deduction, he just settled on Miami through the process of deduction." No, man. Like, how reporting works. You can't call your sources at once. You can't do it at once. There's no simultaneous. Like, hey, let me have a town hall meeting with all my sources so I can get.
That'd be nice. That'd be efficient.
Yeah, it would be efficient. Unfortunately, no. You have to go from one source to the next, to the next. No matter what, all of reporting is a process of deduction because you have to knock out, okay, here's one thing I got to put to the side, here's another thing I got to put to the side, here's another thing I can put to the side. And then eventually you get to the end and you're like, okay, talk to the Dolphins, talk to a source inside Watson's camp, talk to the Texans, say, okay, talk to the Dolphins, talk to the source inside Watson's camp, talk to all these other teams, this is what's shaped up. Am I right? Am I on track here? And so it just, you get that. That's what drives me crazy about social media is that whatever they want out there, like they can figure out how to clip something and say, yeah, it's just this. So I felt compelled to go back out on Twitter and say, look, here's my sourcing on this. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I don't, literally before sending those tweets, on Friday, I sat there and I was like, realistically, what else could I really want here? Well, it'd be great to talk to Roger Goodell. I'm like, get Roger on the phone on this one. So I think I'm about as far as I can go.
Well, Charles, you did a great job. We appreciate you taking time to join us today here on the show, and looking forward to talking to you down the road here as well.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, fellas. Be safe.
Absolutely, you as well. Charles Robinson, a great reporter for Yahoo Sports, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll come back. We'll react a little bit to what Charles had to say there. Take your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. And you can also check out the Nashville Predators. They'll be back in action here in the next few weeks. And the best way to guarantee a spot in Smashville for all the best games is by becoming a season ticket citizen. But single game tickets are a flexible option as well. And Nashville Predators regular season and preseason games in October, November, and December are now on sale to the general public. In future months will go on sale in the coming weeks. You can find those exclusively at Ticketmaster.com. 16 exciting home games coming up during the first 3 months of the season. For more information, make sure you go to NashvillePredators.com/tickets. Once again, that's NashvillePredators.com/tickets. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Thanks to Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports for joining us in the last segment. Great job of reporting over the weekend by Charles when it comes to the Deshaun Watson situation. The Miami Dolphins apparently emerging as the front runner for the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. And Joe, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, you heard Charles in the last segment saying, basically Watson's point of view the whole time has been, the only place I'm waiving my no trade clause to is Miami. But also, if you're Miami, you just drafted a quarterback in the first round a year ago that, as Charles pointed out, seems to be taking some steps in the right direction so far this preseason and in training camp. And Tua Tagovailoa, we know, and you've talked about it, he can throw the ball. He can sling that thing, and he's got some great arm talent at this level. If he comes out and plays well during the first part of this season and no trade is made, I wonder what the Dolphins do and how quickly maybe they even pull themselves out of the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes at this point, given everything else that comes with Deshaun Watson at this point, with all the civil suits that we've seen and that we've talked about extensively here on the show.
Yeah, I feel like, again, and I agree with what Charles said, like Dolphins fans who are like, well, they believe in Tua. What are you talking about? Yeah, that's not the question here. The bottom line is I believe in Tua too. I think he's going to be good, but you can't count on anyone really to be what Watson has proved to be. I mean, that's like Watson is in the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the league. And as Charles said, like in a few years from now, again, you think of all the trouble now and understandably so, but let's understand what this league is too. This league is, if you're good enough, you're going to end up back on the field. And I haven't seen anything throughout this entire process that leads me to believe his career is ending. And so if that's the case, at some point you are going to get beyond that, and you're going to have one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the league with a deal that 3-4 years from now is going to look extremely cheap. So it's, yes, you pick that over Tua. Of course. Any team would. Any team would pick it over anyone other than, name the names. Your guy, right? I mean, Mahomes.
Well, he's only got 1 year left.
Yeah. Well, right. But I'm just saying, like if it's just like, here,
sure.
Who is your quarterback right now? Who are you picking over Watson? There's a couple guys. I mean, you're not picking Tua over Watson. It's not even close. So now it sounds like this isn't going. I don't know. It seems like it's not going to happen. Maybe, who knows what may happen here, but it is a heck of a price that the Texans are asking. And also, as Charles pointed out there, it's interesting too. This new front office does not want to be perceived as being fleeced. You wonder if in the process of not wanting to be perceived as being fleeced, they blow an opportunity to still get a really good value back for him.
Yeah, I think that's certainly got to be on your mind if you're a Texans fan. Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Brandy texting in, I'm a Dolphins fan, and I wish they would stay as far from Watson as humanly possible. No thank you. I can certainly understand that point of view, given everything going on with Deshaun Watson right now.
It's an admirable point of view. I get it. But again, if you follow this league long enough, like if a player of this caliber is going to the player and what it means to the bottom line is going to prevail over how some people feel about things like this. I'm not saying that means the deal's going to happen for sure, but that always wins in this league.
Joe Rexrode, that does it for you today here on the show. You're going to take off today, and we'll be back with us tomorrow morning at 6 a.m.
Got a big appointment, so hopefully Brennan's foot is okay.
Hopefully so.
Yes. So I will be listening and enjoying, and little Mike Vrabel, who, by the way, in the chat yesterday said my Twitter account was a stiff old guy Twitter account.
So Mike Vrabel thinks Rexrode's account is a stiff old guy account. There you go.
He ripped my Twitter account, which I don't appreciate, but I may get in the chat today and fire something back at him, so we can visit that tomorrow.
Yes, we'll have a full breakdown of that tomorrow at 6 a.m. here on the show. Joe Rexrode out for the rest of the day. We'll have the great and powerful Ryan Porth joining us coming up next. We'll continue the conversation on the Titans. I got some more of your thoughts to get to as well in our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025, The Game. Your favorite game, Silly Underdog Picks, is back, baby. Everybody loves them, some silly underdog picks. Get your friends or family and play as a group and sign up today. Pick the 3 football underdog teams you think will win each week for a chance to win weekly prizes like a pair of tickets to a sporting event or to a concert in Nashville. Go to theGameNashville.com or the ESPN The Game Nashville mobile app and sign up now. Silly Underdogs is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robby Stanley, Ryan Porth, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Ryan Porth, how we doing?
What up?
What up? Looking good in the Cincinnati Bearcats hat today. Chris on the text line,
thank you,
driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says going to the bullpen, bringing out the real talent to close it out. Ryan Porth in much better shape than the Cincinnati Reds bullpen.
Well, I was about to say, hopefully we're not going to the Reds bullpen. I mean, if we're going to 29 other bullpens, probably have more success than going to the Reds bullpen, but that's neither here nor there. Right now it's the offense. They can't score worth a lick. So it's always something.
Joey Votto's start hitting again, man.
I know. And all other 8 guys in the lineup.
Always a tough one for the Cincinnati Reds.
They can never get everything going at the same time, but we're not here to talk about the Reds.
Well, maybe they'll make a late season push here. We'll see what happens.
Hey, they're in a playoff spot as of today.
That's right. We'll see what happens on that front. Porth in for Rexrode for the remainder of the show. We've got Ben Arthur from the Tennessean coming up at 9 o'clock. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans, the 53-man roster due later this afternoon, and teams already starting to make cuts around the league. So that will continue to trickle out throughout the day here. I have the Mike Vrabel press conference scheduled to take place around 9:30 for you as well today here on the show. So looking forward to that. Ryan, we were talking earlier in the show about the rookies on this team, and Dylan Raydens, the second-round pick a year ago, and Jared had a take yesterday that he doesn't think that Raydens is going to be a factor for the Titans this season, and certainly I think it's absolutely fair to say at this point he's been a disappointment being selected in the second round. Vrabel said yesterday he's not really in competition right now for the right tackle spot. He listed Tyson Brilo, David Quessenberry, obviously Kendall Lamb just coming back from injury as well. They put Raydens at right tackle. They've moved him inside to guard as well. What are your thoughts on the Dylan Raydens situation? Do you have any confidence that he's going to be able to be a factor for the Titans at any point this year? And if he's not, how concerning is that you think about that position in particular? We know what happened with Isaiah Wilson. Now Dylan Raydens has come in and drafted in the second round to fill the right tackle position long term. You got Caleb Farley as a first-round pick that, as it stands today, doesn't look like he's going to be starting for you in week 1. What do you make of all of the rookies? We did have Elijah Molden on earlier, and he's been a good story in training camp. But what do you think of what this outlook of the rookie class looks like if it's not going to be Dylan Raydens or Caleb Farley in the starting lineup in week 1?
Well, let's start with the right tackle position because you brought up Isaiah Wilson last year, and obviously they got 4 snaps out of Isaiah Wilson before he went MIA. And
impressive snaps.
Well, I mean, it was so impressive that his jersey remained white. I mean, the jersey did not even get dirt on it. I mean, those snaps were so impressive.
It's pretty good.
By Isaiah Wilson. When you combine Isaiah Wilson with Dylan Raydens, if they don't get anything out of Raydens this season like Jared thinks, you would have spent a first-round pick and a second-round pick in back-to-back drafts and not gotten anything out of them in a situation where you lost Jack Conklin to free agency and you're still in a window to win. And if you are not getting anything out of your first-round pick in 2020 and anything out of your second-round pick in 2021, I don't know how that makes you feel good about the drafting that John Robinson is doing, not only at that position, but like what rookies this year do you feel good about? Like going into week 1, like I'm sure Caleb Farley will play a lot throughout his NFL career, but what rookies in this class do you feel good about? Elijah Molden. Rashad Weaver has looked solid in preseason, but it's preseason. We'll see if he can replicate that, against other teams' first-teamers on offense.
I mean, Monty Rice is probably not going to be a factor unless injuries take place.
And you mentioned
third-round pick.
You mentioned that Caleb Farley may not start week 1. Who knows if he'll play week 1?
Is Des Fitzpatrick going to make the team?
Is Racy McMath? I mean, is Racy McMath in science and history going to make the team?
Nice.
I mean, so you're going through this draft class, and there's not a lot of immediate impact. And you look at last year's draft class, mean, do we feel good about Christian Fulton as a second-round pick? I don't. Darrington Evans as a third-round pick can't stay healthy. Laurel Murchison does look like he's going to turn into some sort of factor on the defensive line.
But he's hurt right now.
Well, yeah, and probably more of a depth piece than anything in the NFL, and it's hard to expect anything more out of a fifth-round pick. And then you wasted a seventh-round pick on Cole McDonald, who could have been a kicker. You know, you could have drafted a kicker with your seventh-round pick, but you just took a flyer on McDonald, and he was gone on the second day of camp last year. And then you've got Chris Jackson, who can't stop a nosebleed. So, like, these last two draft classes, I'm getting worried that there are a lot of whiffs from John Robinson. I'm getting worried.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet with this year's draft class as much as last year, because obviously you completely wasted the 29th overall pick. But I think it's a little bit of a concerning trend that in these last two drafts, they're not getting a lot of immediate impact out of these guys. And I get that you have to be patient with young players coming into the NFL, but we always bring up with the Nashville Predators that you need players on their rookie deals to contribute because of the salary cap, and the NFL is no different. I mean, with as much money as they're paying their star players, you need rookies to come in and contribute on cheap deals to fill out a complete roster that can contend for a Super Bowl. And right now, they're not getting that out of the 2020 and 2021 draft classes.
Well, we talk about it with A.J. Brown, too, right? I mean, he's on his rookie deal at the moment, and there's a day coming very soon for the Titans where A.J. Brown is going to be very expensive.
Yes.
And that's a piece you've got to fit in on offense. Obviously, you're going to want to sign him as you move forward. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to have some young players come in. And look, I'm not willing to just say that Dylan Raydens is not going to be a factor this year. I think at that position, especially on the offensive line, you can improve throughout the season. And quite frankly, based on where they are on the interior right now, they may not have a choice. Like, he may have to play. But it is concerning to me that you draft a guy in the second round. You would think there shouldn't need to be this build-up time for him. You should think if you're drafting somebody in the second round at that position, I mean, we talked about it after he was drafted. Is there a chance that Dylan Raydens can make it through camp and start? And he's not close to that. I mean, there are three other guys that the head coach of the football team yesterday listed off in front of Dylan Raydens at this point. And no disrespect to those three guys because they've come in and they've played well, both with the Titans and in Kendall Lamb's case. I thought he was fine with the Browns. But none of those three guys, in my opinion, should be unequivocally your starting right tackle in the NFL. So the fact that Raydens has not been able to come in and beat those guys out, or at least even compete with them, to me is pretty concerning.
I mean, Joe did bring up the Nate Davis comparison earlier about how Nate Davis looked like a complete turnstile at guard in the preseason and early on in the 2019 campaign, and he's turned into somebody who is pretty reliable. So I'm not overly like jumping off ship with Dylan Raydens, but you expected him to come in and at least compete for the starting position. I mean, that's what Nate Davis did. I mean, he came in and competed for that starting position, and Dylan Raydens isn't even close to that right now, according to Mike Vrabel, which that in itself is a little concerning.
Let's go to the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Raymond texting in, only 3 first-round draft picks on the team, and one you didn't pick up his option. And that's the other thing, too. Like, your first-round picks, they've eventually got to start being picked up. You got to start getting to the fifth year with these guys as well.
I mean, you brought up A.J. Brown. He's going to get a huge payday.
Yep.
We know that. To a lesser extent, Jeffrey Simmons is going to get a payday at some point.
Yep.
Nate Davis, you're going to have to pay him a lot more than what you're paying him right now. You would have to think Amani Hooker at some point if he establishes himself as the starting safety alongside Kevin Byard like we expect him to. I mean, that 2019 draft class was so good that now you're going to have to pay them, and you're going to need these rookies coming in the last 2 years to be able to fill depth slots throughout your roster, and I just don't see many hits that J-Rob has made in the last 2 years.
Let's go back to the text line. Sonny texting in. I think the fact that he hasn't played a game in 2 years and is coming from Division II is showing up right now, and that is interesting. We brought this up with Joe about, the Division II thing. We see all kinds of players come in and make an impact at the NFL level from lower levels of college football. But I do wonder, there's a difference between being a wide receiver at a lower level of college football or a quarterback at a lower level of college football and then playing on the line of scrimmage where size, strength is important. And it was pretty obvious early on in camp Raydens was struggling with that. Now, to his credit, by all accounts, he has gotten better and he has responded well after that, but still not ready to play yet at this point. But I do wonder if you're a Titans fan out there, and we got a lot of this after he was drafted, a lot of Titans fans worried about where he played college football and whether or not that significant of a jump from that level of college football to the NFL he'd be able to make in year one. And we're going to see whether or not that's the case as the ball gets rolling here in the next few weeks. Luke on the text line. Give me a break. 3 drafts ago, you went big with Big Jeff, AJ, and Nate Davis. I get last year didn't work out well for the rookies, but Fulton now looks promising, at least. Definitely dumb to be worried about a draft class that hasn't even played a snap yet. I would say it's not dumb to be worried about it because you're basically at this point, Darrington Evans can't stay healthy. Christian Fulton, we don't know what he is at this point yet. I get it that he can run well, but we've not really seen him play much at the NFL level. Caleb Farley's your first-round pick. He's not going to be on the field, or at least starting in week one. And Dylan Raydens is probably not going to be on the field at all.
And I'm not sitting here saying the 2021 class is not going to be good, but when you enter week one in a pivotal season where you are expecting to or hoping to contend for a Super Bowl, you would hope that you feel better about these rookies coming in. And really, there's only 2 out of 8 out of 8 picks that you made. Only 2 of them really you feel good about going into week one.
Yep.
A month from now, we might feel better about Farley. We might feel better about Raydens. We might feel better about Monty Rice. But those are the first 3 picks that you made within the top 100. And how much are you really going to get out of them, in the first half of this season? We don't know. And the we don't know is what is driving a lot of the concern with myself and Titans fans.
Yep.
It might turn out good. It might turn out to be a great draft class. Des Fitzpatrick might pan out as a fourth round receiver, but he has the dropsies already.
Yeah.
Through camp and preseason. So I'm not feeling great about the fact that you traded up to get Des Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, no, I think certainly, I penciled him in as a lock to make the team. And
yeah.
I still think he's probably going to make the team just based on where he was drafted, but it has not been a very memorable preseason for Des Fitzpatrick in the positive way.
I wonder if they didn't trade up, if there would be more talk about them cutting Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I think
because we've seen it before where the Titans have cut a mid-round receiver that they've drafted, and they cut him before they ever got to week one of their rookie season. But you have even more of an investment in this 4th-round pick because you traded up for him.
Coming up next, some news yesterday on the contract front from the Nashville Predators. And some news regarding some potential contract extensions as well. We'll get to that coming up next. Also got some tickets to give away. All that next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We're back in Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5. The Game. Little Bohemian Rhapsody coming back in, which I hear is Ryan Port's favorite song out there.
It is my favorite song.
It's good stuff. He's been known to sing it a time or two as well. It's good to see.
Including Friday nights.
That's right.
At Neighbors in Germantown.
That's right. Porth with a beautiful rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. Great stuff.
We had a grand old time. It's like when Bohemian Rhapsody comes on, it's like this person inside of me comes out that I don't know, and it just goes crazy.
Hey, sometimes it happens. There's these songs that speak to you, and Bohemian Rhapsody, one of those songs for Ryan Porth. Some news yesterday on the Nashville Predators front. Eeli Tolvanen signed to a 3-year deal worth $4.35 million. So that means the Predators have finished business with all of their restricted free agents at this point. Porth, your reaction to Eeli Tolvanen's deal? Because my first thought was if Eeli Tolvanen turns into the player I think the Predators think he can be, that's a pretty good deal for the Predators for the next 3 years. Potentially a top 6 forward locked up at a pretty cheap rate for the next 3 seasons when it comes to Eeli Tolvanen.
Yes, I was not surprised that it was a 3-year deal. I've made a case here recently on Preds Insiders that a longer-term deal could make sense for both sides. And you think back to when David Poile locked up Roman Josi long-term to a 7-year deal, which was worth $28 million at the time, and you had a great defenseman locked up to a $4 million deal for many years. I was curious to see if they were going to go down that road again with Tolvanen, considering their salary cap situation not only this year but for years to come, and see if you might try to take a chance on Tolvanen on a 5 or 6 year deal worth more than $1.5 million per year, maybe in the neighborhood of $3 million a year, and then hope that in 4 or 5 years that contract looks fantastic and you're getting 20 to 30 goals a year out of someone making only $3 million a season.
Yep.
Thought that could have been on the table, but I think this is a contract that at the end of the day will probably work out for both sides. Not much of a risk from the Predators' standpoint. And Eeli Tolvanen, in 3 years, hopefully for his sake, he's in a better spot for him to get that longer-term deal at that point.
Yep, and still be young at that point as well, but still I think something to prove for Eeli Tolvanen in the next few years as he moves forward here. Good step last year. I thought he was lethal on the power play, but needs to be a little bit more dangerous 5-on-5 for the Predators. And with that in mind, we got some tickets to give away for the Predators as they take on the Columbus Blue Jackets at Bridgestone Arena on November the 30th. If you can answer our trivia question, the first person to text in to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. If you can tell us who Eeli Tolvanen scored his first goal against, so which team did Eeli Tolvanen score his first NHL goal against, the winner will receive tickets to see the Predators take on the Blue Jackets coming up at Bridgestone Arena on November the 30th. May have to go back and think a little bit about this one.
I instantly knew this one.
I did too.
When you quizzed me during the break.
Yep. It was a memorable goal. But if you can be the first person on the text line to answer that question correctly, we will notify you, and you will win a pair of tickets to see the Preds take on the Blue Jackets coming up at November 30th at Bridgestone Arena. Porth also did some digging yesterday. We had David Poile on the show a couple of weeks ago and talked about Matthias Ekholm and Philip Forsberg and what their status is in terms of trying to get a contract extension done with both players. And reached out to Forsberg's representation yesterday. He has not begun talks yet with David Poile and the Predators, but said that those talks could begin after Labor Day. So no extension talks yet between Philip Forsberg and the Nashville Predators. Are you surprised that they've waited this long to start having those conversations with Forsberg? We know that Poile has at least been in contact with Ekholm's agent, and it seemed like that was kind of the list and the priority that he was going to go with was Ekholm was first, and then figuring out Forsberg after that. Do you like that approach? Are you surprised by that approach? What's been your reaction to the way the Predators have handled trying to go about signing Ekholm and Forsberg to a contract extension?
I'm not necessarily surprised because it's been David Poile's track record to take one at a time. And, he got Granlund done at the start of free agency, then was able to get UC Saros locked up to a lesser extent. I doubt the Tolvanen or Fabro deals took as much time as maybe Granlund and Saros. But now with most of the UFAs and RFAs taken care of, this is what David Poyle said about a month ago, right? That it would be later in August or around Labor Day when it would start with Ekholm. I would be surprised if Ekholm is not signed before opening night on October 14th. I would be more surprised if Forsberg is signed before October 14th. I think the hope for any Preds fan out there is that both are signed before October 14th when they drop the puck against Seattle. But we don't have a great feel for how either of those are going to go with kind of the direction that this team's been going in the last handful of seasons. Obviously, Ekholm and Forsberg are at key points in their careers where if you sign another big deal here, you're likely committing yourself to Nashville for the rest of either your prime or the rest of your career. So I know both love the city, and I would have to think that with some of this young talent that they've been bringing in the last couple of years, and the fact that the second half of last season was promising in large part because of that young talent, I think does have to be a promising sign to Forsberg and Ekholm that something can get done. But who knows? You just never know how these things will go, these contract negotiations.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. I think kind of the overriding assumption has been that Ekholm will be easier to sign than Forsberg. And
do you agree with that?
I do, but I also, if I'm Matthias Ekholm, you're 31 years old. So you're looking around and you say, all right. And look, I don't know what Matthias Ekholm feels about the team. I've not talked to Matthias Ekholm about the specific direction of the team at this point. And I'm sure that's what David Poyle and his representation is working through at the moment. But I can certainly see a path, if I were Matthias Ekholm, where I would say, I'm 31 years old. I'm in the prime of my career. I had maybe my best season a year ago. I don't know how close this team is to winning. Do I want to see more this year? Do I want to wait before I sign an extension to see what this year with some of the young guys starts to look like? I would not fault a Matthias Ekholm for maybe waiting a little bit into the season and seeing what a Cody Glass looks like, seeing what a Philip Tomasino, a Philip Myers, maybe more importantly, a Dante Fabro. What's he going to look like with Ryan Ellis out of the mix? I would not blame Ekholm for doing that. I still believe he's going to end up being easier to sign just based on his family situation. He loves it in Nashville. And I think legitimately when his name was in trade rumors, and I think back to a story that Adam Vingan did at The Athletic, you could tell. It was affecting Matthias Ekholm.
And that felt genuine.
Yeah, it did.
It felt genuine that he was, taken aback by all of that.
Yeah, it did. So, look, I think it's ultimately going to get done with Ekholm. I could just see, if I were him, where there would be some hesitancy there. And I think Forsberg, that's a real conversation. I think if you're Forsberg, you've got to think about this. Number one, if you have a big year this year, if you're Forsberg, you're probably going to make a lot of money on the open market.
Sure.
And we know that. That's what happens when you get to free agency. And especially if you're a player of his caliber getting to free agency, you're going to get paid, maybe even overpaid in some instances. But the other part of that is, do you want to sign up to go through, whether it's a short-term rebuild or a retool or a youth movement or whatever you want to call it, is that interesting to Philip Forsberg?
See, I think Forsberg, the more I've thought about it, the more I think Forsberg might take the approach of having a big contract year resulting in a big contract on the other side of that contract year.
Yep.
Whether that's here or somewhere else, rather than signing now. Because his stock is lower today than it has been in the last couple of years.
Correct.
Or where it could be by midseason or the end of the year. If he stays healthy, he's probably going to score 30, 35 goals. because the Preds are going to need him to score 30 to 35 goals or even more than that to remain in the playoff picture. I think it would be more of an approach from that aspect than the future of the team. In my estimation.
Oh, it could be. You could absolutely be right about that. And
because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You could hit free agency and end up going to a team that does worse than the Preds over the next 5-10 years.
What if your highest dollar amount that you're offered comes from the Buffalo Sabres?
Right.
What do you do then?
I ain't going to Buffalo.
I'm not going to Buffalo either.
You can pay me money to go to Buffalo.
Guys, not good there. I've lived close to there. Buffalo, no.
Yeah, you have experience in upstate New York.
That's right. I think I'll skip on that one. We'll see what happens on that front. Certainly going to be interesting as training camp gets closer in the next few weeks to continue to monitor negotiations between Matthias Ekholm, Philip Forsberg, and the Nashville Predators. When we come back, we'll be joined by Ben Arthur from the Tennessean, who covers the Titans. We'll look ahead to roster cut-down day with him and the regular season opener coming up in less than 2 weeks against Arizona. All that next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode live from the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Final hour of Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Ryan Porth, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. By the way, congratulations to Donovan on the text line, the winner of our trivia question. which team did Ellie Tolvanen score his first career goal against? It was the Chicago Blackhawks. And not only did Donovan have the team, he had the goalie as well. Cam Ward in goal for the Blackhawks that night. Ellie Tolvanen, nice little backhander in front of the net. His first career goal, which was a couple of years ago.
Was that the night that they scored like 3 goals in the first 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And it felt like it was going to be 8-0 all over again?
It may have been Cam Ward's retirement tour there. Yeah. It was something. I think what that may have been, I need to go back and check this, but that might have been the same day that Roman Josi signed his contract. I have to go back and look.
No.
Was it? I know it was against the Blackhawks. I just can't remember if it was the same game.
No, that was the game earlier in the season, I believe.
Yes, it was. You're correct. That was in October.
I think that was the next season, actually.
Now you've got me all messed up.
I believe Yossi's extension was October of 2019, and Tolvanen scored in December of 2018.
There you go.
That was the same day where Philip Forsberg was placed on IR.
Yes, which is why he was there to begin with.
Exactly.
There you go. So I was totally wrong. Thank you, Porth. Appreciate that. Congratulations to Donovan. You'll be going to see the Predators take on the Blue Jackets coming up on November 30th at Bridgestone Arena. So look forward to that. Got some Nashville SC tickets to give away a little bit later in the show as well. So make sure you stay tuned. We're all about giveaways today here on the program.
We like to reward our listeners for listening.
That is correct. So we'll have Nashville SC tickets to give away coming up here in just a few minutes. Right now, though, we are pleased to go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend Ben Arthur from the Tennessean, who covers the Tennessee Titans. Ben, what's going on, man? How we doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing great, man. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the roster here with the Titans, congratulations on officially becoming a member of the Titans media. You seemed to irritate Mike Vrabel the other day in his press conference, and that usually happens about 5 times a week as the regular season goes on here. So congratulations, Ben. I know it was a huge moment for you.
I really appreciate that. I was kind of wondering when my moment had come. Just in the brief time I've covered the Titans, I'd seen him kind of go at a couple of the reporters a little bit. So I was wondering when my time would come, and it's perfect that my time has come now. With the regular season about to start here pretty soon. So I feel like fully integrated with the media corps at this point.
Absolutely, you should, and you're doing a great job covering the Titans for the Tennesseans. So, Ben, let's start with the wide receiver room, because I feel like that's been the position group that's been talked about the most so far through training camp and throughout the preseason. Now that the 53-man roster is due for the Titans coming up, who do you think makes this team at wide receiver? What does your wide receiver room look like for the Titans?
Yeah, so I'll basically just kind of run down what I have. So obviously Julio and AJ at the top, then Josh Reynolds. He's kind of had some injury issues, but I still believe he makes this team a veteran. He's your kind of number 3 guy. Marcus Johnson, assuming the injury he suffered in the preseason finale isn't serious, he's there at number 4. Chester Rogers, I have in there as well. I also have Cam Batson, and I am forgetting one more receiver. Let me think. Oh, Nick Westbrook, also in there. So I actually have 7 guys, and then with the COVID situation, Racey McMath is kind of still in the picture there, at least. For the moment, like the rule with, the COVID list is that you can kind of carry guys from that list in the preseason into the regular season, and they don't count against the 53 until they're active. So, I have the Titans just kind of keeping him around until, he's kind of off that list, and then you kind of make a decision with him at that point. But I have 7 receivers. It's a very competitive room. I kind of have Batson over Des Fitzpatrick. To me, that preseason finale for Batson, put him, kind of over the top for me. I think kind of with all the talk of the wide receiver room during the summer, I think he was, somewhat of an afterthought, but I think he's a guy who continued to show up and in such a competitive room to make a great lasting impression. against the Bears, 4 catches, 45 yards, a couple nice plays there. I have him just edging Dez Fitzpatrick, and then with Dez, if you're the Titans, you hopefully you can get him back on the practice squad. But I have seven guys on the active roster for the 53.
Ben, as you take a look at running back here, but Mekhi Sargent obviously starting the game the other night against the Bears, and we know what Derrick Henry brings to the table, and he's going to get the lion's share of the carries for the Titans. But with Darrington Evans and his injury situation, Jeremy McNichols not being available last Saturday night, what do you think the running back room looks like for the Titans, and what's your confidence level that Darrington Evans at this point, based on the injury history that he's had so far in his career, is going to be available for the Titans throughout the season? What kind of a decision-making factor is that if you're the Titans in determining who is in that room?
Yeah, I think if you're the Titans, there has to be some concern, right, with Darrington Evans, a guy who, as a rookie last year, missed so much time due to injury, and then, coming into this summer, the Titans had, such high expectations for him, and to him to kind of have another setback like this is, kind of unfortunate for him, but, probably frustrating, for the Titans as well. I mean, we obviously don't know exactly what his injury timeline is, but I could see a scenario where Titans keep him on the 53 and then, they move him to IR, immediately after that, just so that you can get him back in 3 weeks. Because with the moving a player to injured reserve now, they're kind of out for the season. So you keep him on the 53, maybe move him to IR if you think he's going to be out for a while, and then that kind of creates another spot, right? So, obviously you have Derrick at the top of the room. I think Mekhi makes this team, not only because of his play, but because of Darrington's injury situation. Brian Hill was placed on season-ending IR after the Bears game, and then Jeremy McNichols is, another one of those guys, on the COVID list. You can carry him into the season and not have him count on the 53 as long as he's on COVID, and then maybe, if you do maybe move Darrington to IR to start the season, you could put McNichols in there as soon as he's ready to come off reserve COVID, and then, you have Derrick, Mekhi, Jeremy, and then, Kari Blossingame, the fullback. So, I think that's kind of how the running back room will shake out at the moment. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Titans maybe pick up, another, veteran running back to kind of factor into that room. I think there was at least maybe some expectation that Brian Hill could maybe be that number 2 bruiser, for you, but, obviously that won't pan out with him on season-ending, IR. So, they could be, maybe scouring the waiver wire, or maybe pick up, a guy on the street to kind of bolster that room behind Derrick. So yeah, a lot can kind of happen there, but I really see Mekhi, right there, behind Derrick, at least to start the season, and then you get McNichols in there as well, and then Darrington. There's kind of the question mark as to when exactly he'll be able to play.
Ben Arthur from the Tennessean on the line with us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ben, last thing for you here. With the Cardinals coming in less than 2 weeks and the regular season now upon us, what intrigues you the most about this Titans team as they now look ahead to the regular season? What are you most looking forward to watching with this group?
Well, I'd say if I can have 2 things, I think I'd say 2 things. Number one, I think just seeing how the defense starts off the regular season, apart from that Bears game, I mean, they were pretty dominant in those first 2 preseason games. We obviously know the struggles that they had last year, rushing the passer and on third down. Those were 2 areas that they really showed a lot of promise in the preseason. Obviously they weren't going up against a lot of, first stringers. So to see how exactly that carries over, right? The trust they've talked about that has grown, the communication, kind of the new personnel, seeing how all that comes together in week 1 against a pretty dynamic Cardinals offense with a mobile quarterback and a couple great receivers and DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green. I'm really, interested to see how this Titans defense starts the 2021 season. And then the second thing I'm fascinated to see is, what exactly the offense looks like, right? This is kind of, the offense is kind of what, the top side of the ball, so to speak, for this team, coming into the season, based on what they've done in the past. But so many guys have missed time, between like O-line injuries, or, Ben Jones and Nate Davis are on the COVID list right now. Ryan Tannehill is on the COVID list right now. A.J. Brown has missed several practices. Julio Jones hasn't had much time with Ryan Tannehill at all. So, with a group that's supposed to kind of be leading this team, I'm really interested to see how they're able to start the 2021 campaign.
Ben Arthur from the Tennessean has been our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Does a great job covering the Titans for the Tennessean. Ben, great stuff, man. Appreciate you taking time to join us this morning.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. Ben Arthur from the Tennessean, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. When we come back, we'll react a little bit to what Ben had to say there, and also get to some breaking news on the quarterback front in the NFL as well. That's coming up next. Right now, though, got to tell you about my friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. One of the things I love about betting on FanDuel Sportsbook is you get more than one shot to swing for the fences. And right now, new and existing users can get up to $25 back in site credit each day. All you got to do, place a minimum 5-leg baseball parlay, and if it falls one leg short, you get up to $25 back with parlay insurance. That's one of many reasons FanDuel Sportsbook is America's #1 sportsbook. The app is simple to use. They've got great odds on all different betting markets. Got to tell you, the Yankees, they've been hot as of late. Cannot trust Ryan Port's Cincinnati Reds bullpen, so just keep that in mind when you're making these parlay bets. In addition to parlay insurance, if you haven't tried FanDuel Sportsbook yet, new users can place your first bet risk-free. That's right, new users get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. All you got to do, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, sign up with promo code ROB to get in on the action. That promo code is ROB. You must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund issued is non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. A max refund of $25 per game. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5. The Game. Robby Stanley, Ryan Porth, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning.
This is Michelle's karaoke song.
Oh, yeah.
Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, an iconic song.
And we have video proof of you singing this on Friday night.
Yeah.
We also have video proof of Ryan Porth singing
Yes, we do.
City.
You know what you don't
in
have video
all
proof
octaves.
Don't have video proof of Robby Stanley singing. Probably not ever going to get it either.
No, you were in Orlando at that time.
That is true. Some breaking news on the NFL front, and saw this first from Jim McBride of the Boston Globe, also from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. The New England Patriots have released quarterback Cam Newton.
You don't say.
Cam Newton has been released by the New England Patriots, which means Mac Jones going to be the starting quarterback for New England in Week 1 for the Patriots.
You don't say that.
Wow.
Cam Newton did not enter the season as QB1 for the Patriots.
Yeah. Look at you.
This is stunning. Just absolutely stunning.
I detect some sarcasm.
That the New England Patriots have finally admitted that Cam Newton is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm stunned. I am actually stunned. I wonder why they're cutting him.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Like, if you name Mac Jones your starter, great. But is Cam Newton unwilling to sit there as the backup to a rookie?
Maybe. Maybe they just really like Jared Stidham behind him, too. I don't know.
I don't know about that.
I
mean, I have been critical of Cam Newton on this very program over the last handful of months, but I would say Cam Newton is a better backup than Jared Stidham.
I would say so.
So,
he signed a 1-year deal for what? Was it $6 million?
Sounds right.
I think somewhere around there with incentives up to 14. So obviously, he's not going to hit the incentives.
Also tells you something about his trade value, which
exactly
obviously was zero if they are trading him.
Yeah, or
releasing him.
It's interesting. Like, I thought there was a good chance that he was going to start the season, and that at some point, whether it was week 3 or week 7 or week 12, whenever, Mac Jones was going to take over and he'd be the starting quarterback. Like, it doesn't surprise me that Mac Jones is going to play this year, because I think Mac Jones is ready to play based on what I've seen. But Cam Newton, that's pretty interesting.
I feel like of the rookie quarterbacks, Mac Jones is the most NFL ready. I don't know if his ceiling is the highest of the rookie quarterbacks. Like, I would say the ceilings for Trey Lance, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. Who am I forgetting? There's another one.
Zach Wilson.
Yep. Are all higher than Mac Jones's. But I could see Mac Jones come in there, and with a Patriots defense that now isn't all opting out because of COVID like they did last year, I mean, I now see the Patriots as more of a threat to the playoff picture than I did 24 hours ago or an hour ago, when it was assumed that Cam Newton would start the season as their starting quarterback.
Well, this was the quote from Dan Orlovsky earlier this morning on Get Up. It says, quote, Mac Jones today is the better player than Cam Newton. With Mac Jones as the QB, I believe this closes the gap between New England and all the other really good teams in the AFC, mainly Kansas City, Cleveland, and Buffalo. What do you think of that? Mac Jones is the QB, and now that gap is closing between Kansas City, Cleveland, Buffalo, and the New England Patriots.
I can assure you that the gap is closing.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy.
I'm not going to go that far. I mean, could they win 10 games with Mac Jones as their starting quarterback?
Sure.
I mean, their over-under, I believe, was at 9, their win total going into the year.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see this team winning 10 games. Are they closing the gap on the best teams in the AFC, which should include the Tennessee Titans?
Which did not in Orlovsky's little report there.
No, I don't think so.
Friend of the show.
Got to see more from Mac Jones when, when it's actual live snaps in a regular season setting rather than preseason.
Well, I just keep going back to, and the defense, I think, it's a great point to bring up with the Patriots, because they did have players opt out last year, and they're going to have a good defense. We know that about Bill Belichick. I know that they brought in Jonnu Smith and they brought in Hunter Henry. But, like, at some point, you probably need a wide receiver to throw the ball to as well, would be my guess. And I look at that wide receiver room in New England, and there's just not a lot there, man. I mean, unless somebody emerges out of nowhere, they've just got a bunch of guys at wide receiver. Nobody that you're really afraid of. Like, they've been waiting on Harry to figure it out for a long time. And I just think he kind of is what he is at this point.
I mean, Nelson Aguilar is probably their number one, who they signed in the offseason.
But does Nelson Aguilar like strike fear into the heart of the opposing defense? I would say probably not.
Absolutely not. But, the positive thing here, Robbie, is that Jonnu Smith can now catch footballs with his hands, because if Cam Newton was the starting quarterback, Jonnu Smith would have had to find a way to catch footballs with his feet, because that's where the ball would end up if Cam Newton was throwing the ball to him.
There we go.
So now with Mac Jones as the starting quarterback, I think Jonnu Smith is going to have a better season because he can actually use his hands.
Very nicely done. So what does this mean, do we think, for Cam Newton as he moves forward here? Because
I hope he signs with the Colts.
Well,
I hope he goes to the Colts,
bring that up.
And that the Colts have to run him out there, because then that would mean an automatic 0-3 to start the year if Carson Wentz isn't healthy to start the year.
Well,
because he sucks.
I think we know that about Cam Newton. That's how you feel about Cam Newton.
Yes.
But are his days as a starting quarterback done? Like, I look around the league, Ryan Fitzmagic still getting it done out there as a starting quarterback for the Washington football team. There's a team like the Broncos. They've got Teddy Bridgewater as their starter right now. Drew Lock backing up. We talked about the Deshaun Watson situation. Like, is there any chance Cam Newton is going to be a starting quarterback in this league again, or is he going to have to accept that he's just a backup at this point?
I think he's going to have to accept that. Now, if you're the Texans, like, why would you go sign Cam Newton? So that you can go from 3 wins to 4 wins?
I don't know.
Or maybe they go from 3 wins to 0 wins, and they have a better chance if they sign Cam Newton to then
they might go
draft
0
Spencer
wins
Rattler
anyway.
Or Spencer Howell with the number 1 overall pick next year.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go both ways on that if you're the Houston Texans.
You could. We'll see what happens on that front.
I am convinced with them releasing Cam Newton that Cam Newton was unwilling to sit as the backup.
You know what my first thought was?
Because his ego is too big for that.
When I saw this news, I thought back to a couple of weeks ago here on the show when we played the audio from Keyshawn Johnson, who had Cam Newton listed as the 12th best quarterback in the league in front of Ryan Tannehill.
I forgot
and now
about
he's
that.
not going to make the team in New England.
I forgot about that.
So just a thrilling take from Keyshawn Johnson there.
Woof.
Cam Newton at number 12 in the league. I laughed about it at the time. It's even funnier now.
I'm sure Keyshawn Johnson will probably advocate for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go out and sign Cam Newton so that Cam Newton can lead the Buccaneers to a Super Bowl, because the quarterback they have
Brady.
there just can't do it.
It was just an asinine take at the time, and now
even worse.
It's just so
even
much
worse now.
Just so much worse.
12th rated quarterback in the league, my butt.
Just unbelievable. When we come back, we will have the Mike Vrabel press conference from today. Vrabel's been at home for his press conferences the last few days.
And he's been quite ornery.
Got a little spicy the last couple of days as well. Scheduled to take place at 9:30 here today. We'll have that for you coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Ryan Porth, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Going to have Mike Vrabel's press conference coming up for you here shortly, scheduled to begin here in the next few seconds here on this Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Mike Vrabel has been at home the last couple of days. If you missed it, breaking news in the NFL, Cam Newton released by the New England Patriots. So some big news on that front from the NFL. We'll see where Cam Newton ends up around the league. I would imagine somebody will be interested in Cam Newton, whether it's as a starting quarterback or whether it's as a backup quarterback. But we'll see what happens on that front. And I saw an incredible stat that got put out there. Josh Allen, now the oldest quarterback in the AFC East at the age of 25.
Crazy.
25 years old. And I believe we're now ready for the press conference with Mike Vrabel. Here is Titans head coach Mike Vrabel as they look ahead to the season coming up against Arizona starting in less than 2 weeks.
And what his focus is and his emphasis for the team, is, I would say probably unique just from the standpoint that, someone with those types of stats that Derek has had and those accolades in that position, it's unique for him to be able to, to care so much about the team and try to put the team first.
Jim?
Like you mentioned, Quisenberry is one of the guys in the mix at tackle. What do you like about him? What does he do on a consistent basis that has kind of put him in the mix for you the last couple of years?
Well, he's performed when he's been out there. I think he plays a great effort. I think he's, shown the ability to function well in our run scheme, the things that we're asking them to do, to get out there and run off the football. And I love his competitiveness and his ability. He finishes, and he's proven when that he's been out there that we've been able to to function as an offense.
John, want to?
Mike, how would you evaluate Bud Dupree's kind of progress here in the past few weeks? How do you evaluate his improvement as he returns from injury?
I mean, I think Bud's, just continue to progress, and I think we've put a little bit more on him, each day here in the last week or so. So he'll work today, and continue to monitor him and see how he feels as he, works through his return to play. And hopefully he won't have any setbacks, and we'll continue to add, to his workload. But, as far as improvement, his attitude's been fantastic. He's, there's a fine line, you want to learn and you want to be able to lead. And that's hard, having not been out there. And I think he stayed into it. He stayed, positive, and he stayed a large part of our football team, even though, he hasn't been able to be out there in the preseason games or, for most of the practices.
Jared Stone?
Yeah, Mike, the other day you said that while you were kind of on your work sabbatical or your COVID quarantine, that you had seen some takes that we had in the media, and I was just wondering which ones those were. and which ones that you perhaps took umbrage with?
No, I don't take umbrage with it. Hey, Jared, how are you? You were in your radio voice right there. And
thanks, Mike.
I don't. I think that my point was that the tone is much different here in this setting than it maybe is in the social media setting. And if there's things and questions or issues that people have, that we should use this time here, to discuss them. And I don't take umbrage, and I don't, I enjoy the fact that everybody has an opinion and a take. And again, that was me on my, being miserable in my basement, really. And that's what that was. But we have to have an avenue, to promote, our football team, but also hold, the integrity of what we feel like is important for the team and the things that we try to believe in. And so I think that's certainly a fine line, but no umbrage. As I scramble to look up what that word actually means, Jared, I don't think that if it's a negative thing, I don't think that I took anything negatively.
Terry?
Mike, how hard is it to get an accurate evaluation on guys who've missed a lot of time with injuries and all here in camp in the preseason, guys like Cruikshank or Darrington Evans?
Yeah, I think that's a valid question, Terry. It's an important question. It's one that John and I discuss, frequently. It's the battle that you wage between potential and what you've been able to actually witness. So I think it's hard. I think it's really hard, Terry. I think that being out there in the games and watching guys respond and, see how they get into the flow of the game and make adjustments mid-game and see how they react. I think that's really critical. And, it has been unfortunate not to be able to evaluate some of those guys that you mentioned and probably even more, some other guys.
Paul?
Hey, Mike, have you or will you make cuts before this practice? Or are you going to have guys out there that you then call in afterwards to deliver news?
There were some cuts that were made prior to practice, and then there will also be some decisions that are made after practice.
So we'll just find them out by taking attendance?
Find what out?
Find out who you cut this morning by taking attendance, or are you going to announce?
I'm not sure what Robby's plans are. I don't know if that's, usually we send those to the league. We talk to the players first, and then we send those into the league. And then when, Robby gets the go ahead from John and his staff, we usually send them out to you. So that hasn't changed, I don't think, since I've been here.
Luke?
Paul asked my question. I'm good.
Oh, come on, Luke. You can make up a new one.
I'll wait till you're back in person, Mike.
Okay.
Let's go. Me, Robby, I didn't.
John, go ahead.
Come on, Glenn, bring it. Let's go, babe. Come on.
I'm ready. I'm ready for you. You've talked a lot. Everybody's talked a lot about third downs. Getting better defensively on third downs being a top priority. With that, and playing more aggressively on third downs, I guess is the other side of the coin. Maybe from time to time, you get burned in a situation like that. Is that the balance kind of that has to be struck in third down situations if you want to get better and more aggressive?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that go into playing. And I think knowing the situation, knowing the sticks, knowing what coverage, we're in, what we're trying to get out of each and every coverage. understanding the whole concept of how the defense is trying to work. There's a lot of things, and then, sure, the tighter that you play on them, you're going to have, some of those things you don't, want them, but there's conversions that they make. If you're just going to press everybody, they're just, they're going to run, they're going to run fades, and they're going to, there's only so many different things that they can do, and so you can't just get up there because they're going to, they're going to bunch and stack you up in those shorter yardages. I think you have to have things that are built in, to help the players and, with the defense and where their help is and how they're handling all those things. They're just not going to, spread you out and make it easy on you. They're going to bunch you and stack you and compress the formation. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Tron. Tron, you there? Steve Lyman.
Hey, Mike. Glad to hear you're coming back tomorrow. The last year, you guys had the situation where you had a third quarterback that was, kind of separated off from the team for COVID-related purposes to make sure you had that emergency guy. I'm wondering if the situation with Ryan over the last week, has that changed the plan you guys would have about maybe keeping an extra quarterback or having a quarterback in a COVID safety zone or whatever throughout the course of the season? Have you evaluated that all given what's happened in the last week?
Well, I think that we have. I think that those are conversations that we've continued to have, and that may happen. That could happen. I don't think we're prepared to, to make a determination right now, but it's something that has been discussed and talked about.
Emily?
Yeah, Coach, I know you said yesterday that you didn't necessarily like having these conversations or didn't want to have these conversations over Zoom, talking to the guys that are cut today. So with you still in quarantine, how do you plan on handling those conversations today?
Well, those will be, John will handle those. I won't, go through a process of, trying to set up some sort of camera but again, I'll have the opportunity to reach out to those players. And some of them will be back on our football team. Hopefully they'll either get claimed, which means that they have a job with somebody else, or, they would be willing to come back to our football team in some capacity on the practice squad. So that's, I think, how we would handle it, Emily. Certainly a huge personal element, to that is important to try to be empathetic towards.
That was Titans head coach Mike Vrabel at his press conference today. A couple of doozies in there, Poor. That was
just
nice.
Riveting. That is edge of your seat stuff right there from Mike Vrabel.
That's awesome. We'll react to that a little bit more when we come back. Take your thoughts as well on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Make sure you're tuning in to Nashville Sounds Baseball tonight on ESPN 94.9 as the Sounds begin a 6-game road series against Louisville, the AAA affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds. Pre-game show with Jeff Him starts at 5:15 and first pitch is at 5:30. Nashville Sounds Baseball presented by 312 Pizza Company and Farm Bureau Health Plans. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. That was the riveting take of Keyshawn Johnson, who is, as we come to find out, Ryan Porth, big Cam Newton fan here on the program. Big Cam Newton fan for Keyshawn Johnson.
12th best quarterback in the NFL,
league.
According to Keyshawn Johnson.
That's
just
right.
got released earlier today by the New England Patriots.
That is correct. Cam Newton's tenure in New England is done. Mac Jones' era begins with the New England Patriots. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
By the way, Mac Jones' first game is going to be against Tua and the Dolphins.
Oh,
week
yeah.
1. So 2 former
Alabama
quarterbacks going head-to-head next week in week 1.
That's right. Going to be interesting to see how that shakes out there. See if Tua is the quarterback. Maybe they'll trade for Deshaun Watson.
Maybe they'll sign Cam Newton.
Maybe so. We'll see what happens on that front. We got some Nashville SC tickets to give away, but before we do that, make sure you join ESPN 94.9 this Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. for NSC Backstage featuring Nashville SC players and coaches. Watch the show online via 102.5 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and TheGameNashville.com. NSC Backstage brought to you by Camarena Tequila, the official tequila of Nashville SC. And we've got some tickets to give away to see Nashville SC take on New York City at Nissan Stadium coming up this Saturday. Be caller number 3. Caller number 3 at 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025 on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You can win a family 4-pack of tickets to see Nashville SC take on New York City at Nissan Stadium coming up this Saturday. Ryan Porth, what did you think of that Mike Vrabel press conference? That was some pretty interesting stuff there. By the way, Mike Vrabel saying he does not anticipate anybody else coming off the COVID list today as well, but an interesting back and forth there between Mike Vrabel and Jared Stillman regarding Vrabel's move the other day and the issues that he had with the media.
Well, can you call it a back and forth? Because Jared asked the question, and then Vrabel awkwardly answered the question.
Well, he went into like stall mode about Jared's radio voice and then got back into it.
Correct. And then he admitted at the end of his answer that he was looking up the word umbrage, which
was awesome.
By the way, if you don't know, I just Googled umbrage definition. It is a noun. 1, it is taking offense or annoyance. 2, shade or shadow, especially as cast by trees.
Yes.
I did not know number 2.
Thank you.
Just for anybody out there who doesn't know what umbrage means. So
also a character in Harry Potter. There you go. Very educational program today.
Well, I've never seen Harry Potter, so I wouldn't know that.
It does not surprise me at all.
Nor do I have interest in watching Harry Potter.
We really got to do some work on that front. Well, I will say, it sounds like Vrabel's coming back to work tomorrow at the field, although
he did not go all the way saying that he was going to be back at the building.
So he sits there and he opens the press conference. Teresa Walker, who begins every press conference, starts to ask the question, and Vrabel says he's looking forward to coming back to work tomorrow. And then Teresa asked him if he'll be in the building. Oh, I'm looking forward to coming back to work tomorrow. Why can't you just say you'll be back in the building? I don't understand it. Now
he will not confirm anything to anybody in that setting.
Look, it's funny to me. But hey, whatever.
By the way, you know how all the Titans media live tweets Vrabel's press conference?
Yes.
Like all the different things that he says?
Correct.
I only saw one live tweet come through during the response to Jared's question about him taking umbrage to some things that the media says.
Was it from Wyatt?
It was from Wyatt. And during that answer, this was the only one I saw come through Twitter. And he said, Vrabel acknowledges at times he's been miserable in his basement during quarantine.
Yes. That was a part of the answer. He did acknowledge that on that front.
I mean, that answer to Jared was like the Dennis Rodman gif.
Yes,
it was just
hands
going
all
everywhere.
Over the place. Oh, that was awesome. By the way, apparently before 10 minutes before Cam Newton got cut by the Patriots, Shannon Sharp's quote on his show with Skip Bayless, quote, I believe Cam is the best guy to start right away. They have a real chance to go with Cam to go 5-2. The advantage Cam has is that he's been in the system for a year. 10 minutes later, Cam Newton gets cut by the Patriots.
I'm sure that clip will show up on Freezing Cold Takes.
I'm sure will.
If it's not there already.
Yes. Kathlena texting into our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I absolutely love Mike Vrabel with some heart emojis and exclamation points in there as well.
See, it's funny while they're winning and like there's positive vibes, but if he's doing this after back-to-back losses that the team should not have in the middle of the season, it's not as funny anymore.
No. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
But we were both laughing our tails off here in studio as Vrabel continued to dodge questions or, refused to fully answer questions.
Yep. It was some good stuff on that part of it.
But hey, Jared, according to Vrabel, Jared has a nice radio voice.
Yeah, that's good to know. Since he's on the radio every day at 2 o'clock.
That is a good thing.
Let's go back to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Brian in Portland texting in. Sorry, Porth. Just got to throw some trash talk in here. The Reds' offense and bullpen is bad when you lose to my Marlins. We're not good, and those last 2 games for y'all were not good in all capital letters.
Well, tell me something that I don't know. I watched Sunday, and I wanted to rip my eyeballs out.
That bad, huh?
And I wanted to rip my eyeballs out last night. I had more enjoyment seeing the man cave. We've got the 2 TVs. I had more enjoyment last night watching Bachelor in Paradise on the other TV.
I would not say that.
Versus the Reds game on the TV on the right.
Oh boy, that's disappointing.
Because when they lose like that, especially to that team from St. Louis, it's just hard to watch.
The Dodgers, they beat the Braves last night, but the Braves started to figure things out a little bit recently. What do you think of their chances in the postseason?
Who?
The Braves.
My guy Ian Anderson, he's got it.
See, I know you're a big fan of Ian Anderson. Look, if they make the playoffs, they're likely facing Milwaukee in the first round. I do not like their chances against the Milwaukee Brewers. I do not think that's a good matchup for the Braves, so I don't like the Braves' chances in the playoffs. I think it would almost be like they would be winning the division by process of elimination because the Mets continued to stub their toe throughout the entire summer. The Phillies can't get their bleep together, and the Washington Nationals and the Marlins aren't very good. So process of elimination, even without Acuna, the Braves win the division.
It's been a lot of excitement on the text line about the Braves as well.
I know. Look, if I was a Braves fan, I would be excited too because it's looking a lot better than it did 2 months ago to make the playoffs. And anything could happen in the playoffs. I don't like the matchup against the Brewers because that's likely who they would play.
Ryan Porth, we appreciate you coming in to fill out the rest of the show here today.
I appreciate you having me in, and I thought it was fitting that I was in studio when the Cam Newton news broke.
I thought it was as well. We'll be back. Joe Rexrode back in the saddle tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Darren Donica Chase coming up next. You're listening to ESPN 102.5 The Game.